Welcome back, it's Jackson. And in today's episode, I'm looking at the worst terrifying big cat attacks ever recorded. From a content creator family whose safari filming session collapsed into chaos when a pride moved toward their vehicle to a rookie guide who left the safety of the Jeep, walked straight into the path of a Bengal tiger, and met the worst fate possible. April 16, 2017, and the rugged wilderness of South Africa's Limpopo province stretched endlessly under the scorching African sun. The vast bushveld landscape, dotted with acacia trees and rocky outcroppings, provided perfect habitat for some of Africa's most dangerous predators. Xander and Colt Castellano, ages 19 and 21, had traveled from their family's Texas ranch for what was supposed to be the hunting trip of a lifetime, a graduation gift from their wealthy rancher father. The Castellano brothers had grown up hunting white-tailed deer and wild hogs on their family's 10,000-acre ranch outside Dallas. But this African safari represented their first encounter with a truly dangerous game. Their father had spared no expense, hiring one of South Africa's most experienced professional hunters as their guide and booking them into an exclusive hunting concession known for its large lion population. Both young men were skilled marksmen who had been hunting since childhood, but they were also known troublemakers who had a history of creating chaos wherever they went, often ignoring authority figures and acting impulsively. Their professional hunter had spent the morning tracking a large coalition of male lions that had been terrorizing local cattle ranches, making them prime targets for trophy hunters willing to pay premium prices. The guide had located the lions resting in thick bush during the heat of the day, positioning the brothers for what should have been a straightforward shot at close range. African lions are apex predators that can weigh up to 420 pounds and possess incredible strength, speed, and endurance. Male lions are particularly dangerous when wounded, as their territorial instincts and pain combine to create an extremely aggressive and unpredictable adversary. Lions can reach speeds of 35 miles per hour in short bursts and possess powerful jaws capable of delivering a bite force exceeding 650 pounds per square inch. Xander, the younger brother, fired first, his shot striking the massive male lion in the shoulder rather than the vital chest area their guide had indicated. The wounded lion roared in pain and fury before disappearing into the dense bush, leaving a clear blood trail that experienced hunters knew indicated a dangerous situation. As their professional hunter assessed the shot placement and began coordinating the follow-up procedure, a sudden equipment malfunction caused his radio to fail just as he was calling for backup. The rocky terrain created a natural barrier that temporarily separated him from the brothers as he moved to higher ground, seeking radio contact with base camp. True to their troublemaking nature, Xander and Colt decided to pursue the wounded lion immediately during this brief separation, believing their hunting experience back home had prepared them for tracking dangerous game. They grabbed their rifles and followed the blood trail into the thick vegetation, ignoring everything their guide had taught them about wounded, dangerous game protocols. The wounded 400-pound lion had taken refuge in a dense thicket of wait-a-bit thorns, where his golden coat provided perfect camouflage among the dappled shadows. Xander entered the thicket first, his rifle raised and ready, but the dense vegetation made it impossible to see more than a few feet in any direction. The lion waited until both brothers were deep in the thorns before launching his attack. The lion's initial charge struck Xander with devastating force, his massive paws driving the young man to the ground while his claws raked across Xander's chest and arms. The impact knocked Xander's rifle from his hands as the lion's jaws clamped down on his neck and head, his 4-inch canine teeth compressing his airway and causing catastrophic trauma. Xander lost consciousness within seconds as the lion's powerful bite compressed his airway and severed critical blood vessels, though the fatal damage would take several minutes to complete its work. The wounded lion remained focused on Xander, his predatory instincts driving him to maintain his grip on his victim. When Colt moved closer and began shouting at the lion while raising his rifle, the big cat's attention shifted to this new threat. The lion released Xander and immediately turned toward toward Colt, his wounded state making him even more aggressive and unpredictable. The lion's claws tore through Colt's safari shirt and deep into his chest and shoulders, while his powerful jaws sought purchase on the young man's neck. Colt managed to fire one shot that struck the lion in the leg, causing the wounded predator to retreat deeper into the bush after inflicting severe injuries on both brothers. The brothers' father and their professional guide reached the thicket 45 minutes later, after the guide had restored radio contact and organized a search when the brothers failed to respond to calls. They found Xander unconscious and dying from massive blood loss and trauma, while Colt remained barely conscious with severe wounds across his chest and shoulders. The nearest hospital was over 200 miles away, and arranging helicopter evacuation from the remote concession required nearly 3 hours of coordination between multiple agencies. During the long flight to Johannesburg, Xander succumbed to his injuries from blood loss and trauma. Colt survived the initial surgery, but died from multi-organ failure following overwhelming infection and trauma 2 days later. The investigation revealed that both brothers had violated fundamental hunting safety protocols by pursuing wounded, dangerous game without their guide. The tragedy devastated their father, who never recovered from losing both sons in a single day. The incident led the hunting concession to implement stricter safety protocols, requiring clients to remain within sight of their professional guides at all times, with immediate hunt termination for any safety violations. It was June 18th, 2015, and the golden afternoon light cast long shadows across the rural village of Dana in Ethiopia's Konso Highlands, as 5-year-old Abel played with his friends just feet from his family's modest home. The remote highland village, nestled among rolling hills and traditional stone terraces, was home to a tight-knit farming community where children's laughter often echoed through the dusty streets. Abel's mother, Kolik, was inside their home, preparing the evening meal, occasionally glancing out to check on her son as he played his favorite games with the neighborhood children. Abel was known throughout the village as a particularly joyful child, always quick to smile and eager to join in any game or adventure. His infectious laughter could be heard from dawn until dusk as he chased his friends through the narrow pathways between the traditional thatched roof houses. The Konso Highlands had been home to his family for generations, where ancient farming traditions continued unchanged and children grew up with a deep connection to the land and its rhythms. The village of Dina sat in a region where wildlife and human settlements existed in an uneasy balance, with the surrounding countryside home to various predators that occasionally ventured close to human habitation. Local elders often shared stories of encounters with dangerous animals, but attacks on humans were rare enough that daily life continued with only basic precautions. What made this particular afternoon different was Abel's tendency to wander slightly away from the group when something caught his interest, a habit that his mother had gently corrected many times before. Spotted hyenas are among Africa's most formidable predators, living in complex matriarchal societies led by dominant females who can weigh up to 150 pounds. These powerful carnivores possess one of the strongest bite forces of any mammal, capable of crushing bones that other predators cannot break. Hyenas are primarily nocturnal hunters, but drought conditions and food scarcity can force them to hunt during daylight hours when prey presents itself. Their intelligence and adaptability have made them successful survivors across Africa, and they are known to be bold around human settlements when food sources become scarce. A large female hyena emerged from the scrubland surrounding the village, likely drawn by the sounds and movement of the playing children. The predator had been hunting in the area for several days, and the drought conditions had made natural prey scarce, forcing her to venture closer to human habitation than normal. Abel's position at the edge of the group made him an easy target as the hyena approached with the silent stealth that characterized her species. The hyena struck without warning, grabbing Abel around the head with her powerful jaws before he could react or call for help. The massive predator's bite force immediately caused devastating trauma to the child's face and skull, while her razor-sharp teeth punctured through soft tissue and bone. Abel's screams pierced the afternoon air as the hyena began dragging him away from the village, her powerful neck muscles easily pulling the small child across the rough terrain. The hyena dragged Abel approximately 400 100 yards through the rocky highland terrain, over thorny bushes, and across dried creek beds that opened additional wounds on his small body. The predator's grip never loosened as she pulled her victim toward a secluded area where she could feed undisturbed. Abel's cries grew weaker as blood loss and trauma began overwhelming his small body. Kolick heard her son's initial screams and immediately rushed outside, where she discovered the other children pointing frantically toward the scrubland. When Kolick finally caught up to the hyena, she found the predator attacking Abel's motionless form in a small clearing. Without hesitation, she threw herself at the massive animal, using her bare hands to pull and strike at the hyena while screaming. The hyena, startled by the sudden human intervention, released its grip on Abel and retreated into the surrounding brush. Abel's injuries were catastrophic and immediately life-threatening. The hyena's powerful jaws had completely torn away his lower jaw, leaving his mouth gaping open with half of his tongue missing. His upper lip had been ripped away, and his right ear had been severed from his head. Blood poured from multiple wounds across his face and scalp, while his breathing was labored and irregular. Against all odds, Abel survived the grueling journey to Addis Ababa, where emergency medical teams immediately began working to save his life. The extent of his injuries shocked even experienced trauma surgeons who had never seen a hyena attack survivor with such devastating facial damage. Abel underwent 9 hours of emergency surgery, with doctors using bone and skin grafts from his leg to begin reconstructing his destroyed jaw and face. Abel's attack prompted local authorities to implement enhanced wildlife management programs in the Kanso Highlands, including better livestock protection and community education about hyena behavior. His family received support from international medical charities, ensuring that Abel would receive the ongoing care needed for his recovery. It was May 27th, 2018, and the sun was dropping fast over Sabi Sands Game Reserve in South Africa. That golden hour light was fading into something darker, and the bush was doing what it always does at dusk, shifting. The birds go quiet, the shadows stretch, and the animals that hunt by ambush start to move. The lodge sat unfenced on the edge of the reserve. Beautiful place. Open-air dining, walkways between buildings, the whole luxury safari experience. Staff had warned guests about predator movement during the transition hours, that window between daylight and darkness when visibility drops, and the rules of the bush change. Leopards in the area were partially habituated, comfortable enough around human infrastructure to move through it, but absolutely still wild, still predators. Tilda Braun was a 33-year-old solo traveler staying at the lodge. She'd come to South Africa on her own, which takes a certain kind of confidence. Traveling solo through Big Five territory isn't something most people do. She wasn't reckless by nature. She wasn't ignoring rules for a thrill. By all accounts, she was someone who loved travel and wanted to experience the bush up close. But that evening, as the light was failing, Tilda walked between buildings alone. No escort, no companion, just her, moving through open space as dusk settled in. I need to talk to you about leopards, because I think they're the most unsettling predator on this continent. Not the biggest, not the strongest, but pound for pound, the most efficient killer out there. A male leopard can weigh up to 200 pounds, but even females at 130 are devastatingly powerful. They are solitary ambush hunters. They don't chase you down across open ground like a lion. They wait, they watch, and they close the distance without you ever knowing they're there. Their approach is silent, genuinely silent. Padded feet, low body, using every piece of cover available. Grass, shadow, furniture, walls, whatever's there. They attack from behind almost every time, targeting the neck. Their killing method is precise, a bite that compresses the airway and blood vessels simultaneously. You lose consciousness in seconds. These animals drag prey twice their weight into trees. The strength-to-size ratio is hard to believe. Tilda was walking through the lodge grounds, partially bent forward, adjusting something she was carrying. She paused, and I need you to understand what that looked like from the leopard's perspective. A lone figure, dusk light, crouched. Posture, stationary, distracted. Every one of those is a vulnerability cue to an ambush predator. The leopard had been using vegetation and shadows along the walkway for concealment. It closed the distance without a sound. Tilda had no idea it was there. It launched from behind. The impact drove her forward and down, body hitting the ground hard. Claws anchored deep into her back, pinning her immediately. There was a brief struggle, arms moving, body twisting, but the leopard was already repositioning. It secured a bite around the back of her neck, clamping down on her airway and the blood vessels on both sides. The pressure was immediate and total. Her movements slowed within seconds. The compression cut off oxygen and blood flow to the brain simultaneously. She went limp. This one really messes with me. She didn't make a dramatic mistake. She didn't ignore a warning or push a boundary. She walked between two buildings at the wrong time of day, and something was watching her the entire way. Staff discovered the scene shortly after. Emergency responders confirmed the cause of death as asphyxiation and vascular compromise from a sustained neck bite. The back injuries from the initial strike were severe, but secondary to the killing bite. The lodge reinforced strict dusk movement policies. No guest movement between buildings without an armed escort after a certain hour. The investigation attributed the attack to predator habituation and human vulnerability cues. The leopard had grown comfortable navigating the lodge grounds, and Tilda's posture, isolation, and timing aligned with exactly the kind of target a leopard is built to exploit. The animal was monitored, but not destroyed. What I can't shake about Tilda's story is how quiet it was. No charge across open ground, no roaring, no warning, just silence, and then it was over. Her story didn't make massive headlines, but within the safari industry, it reinforced something guides already knew. Dusk belongs to the leopard, and if you're moving through their space alone, you might never hear what's coming. It was November 23, 2014, and the rugged wilderness along the border of Montana's Glacier National Park lay shrouded in early winter snow as Talon Blackfeather tracked an injured deer through the dense forest. The 28-year-old Native American ranch hand supplemented his income by working as a hunting guide during deer season, using skills passed down through generations of his family, who had lived in this harsh landscape for centuries. Talon had grown up on the Blackfeet Reservation just outside the park boundaries, learning traditional tracking methods from his grandfather, while also mastering modern hunting techniques during his years working for local ranchers. His reputation as one of the area's most skilled trackers had made him a sought-after guide among hunters visiting Montana, providing crucial supplemental income during the harsh winter months when ranch work became scarce. As an experienced tracker familiar with the area, Talon often helped local ranchers recover wounded wildlife that wandered onto their property from the adjacent wilderness. Talon had decided to track a deer that had been struck by a car on Highway 2, just outside the park boundary on private ranch land. The injured animal had managed to cross onto the ranch property where Talon worked, and the landowner had asked him to locate and dispatch it humanely to prevent suffering and potential predator attraction. His familiarity with the area and confidence in his abilities made him comfortable working alone. The blood trail led Talon deep into a remote canyon on the ranch property where few humans ventured, especially during the harsh Montana winter. The injured deer had managed to travel nearly 2 miles before finally succumbing to its injuries in a small clearing surrounded by dense timber. Talon's years of experience had taught him to remain alert for signs of predators, but his focus on the tracking task had made him less cautious than usual. Talon discovered the deer carcass in the small clearing, but he immediately realized he wasn't alone when he spotted the large male cougar feeding on the opposite side of the kill. The 150-pound cat looked up from his meal, his amber eyes fixed on Talon with the intense stare of a predator assessing a potential threat to his food source. Mountain lions, also known as cougars or pumas, are North America's largest wild cats, with adult males weighing up to 200 pounds and possessing incredible strength and agility. They are solitary hunters with excellent camouflage and the ability to leave leap vertically up to 15 feet and horizontally up to 40 feet. Cougars are territorial animals that will aggressively defend their kills from any perceived threat, and their powerful jaws and razor-sharp claws make them extremely dangerous when cornered or challenged. Most experienced outdoorsmen know that the proper response to a cougar encounter is to back away slowly while maintaining eye contact, making yourself appear as large as possible without making sudden movements. But Talon's frustration at losing the deer he had tracked for hours, combined with his confidence in his size advantage, led him to make a fatal decision. Instead of retreating, Talon began shouting at the cougar and throwing rocks, believing his aggressive behavior would intimidate the big cat into abandoning its kill. He had successfully scared off black bears using similar tactics, but mountain lions respond very differently to human aggression, especially when defending a fresh kill. The cougar interpreted Talon's aggressive actions as a direct challenge for possession of the deer carcass. The big cat crouched low with his ears flattened and tail twitching, maintaining his threatening posture while Talon continued his aggressive display. When Talon took several steps closer while continuing to shout and throw rocks, the cougar's defensive instincts fully activated. Talon turned momentarily to pick up a larger rock, and in that instant, the 150-pound predator struck with the silent efficiency that made cougars such deadly hunters. The big cat covered the distance in a single explosive leap, attacking from behind with devastating precision. The cougar's powerful jaws clamped down on the back of Talon's neck with crushing force, his canine teeth causing catastrophic cervical trauma leading to rapid paralysis. Talon's attempts to fight back were cut short as the cougar's bite caused immediate loss of motor function and rapid unconsciousness. The attack lasted less than a minute, with the cougar maintaining his grip until all movement ceased. The big cat's natural hunting instincts, perfected over millions of years of evolution, had eliminated the threat to his kill with lethal efficiency. Once satisfied that Talon posed no further danger, the cougar dragged the body several feet into cover and resumed feeding. Talon's body was found 3 days later by search teams after he failed to return home from his tracking expedition. The heavy snowfall and remote location had complicated search efforts, while the cougar had moved the body into dense timber where it was partially concealed. The investigation revealed clear evidence of the encounter, including cougar paw prints in the snow and the defensive feeding behavior around the deer carcass. The investigation confirmed that Talon had been working within his authorized duties on private ranch land when the encounter occurred. It was August 11th, 2014, and the African sun hung heavy over the private game reserve outside Hoedspruit, Limpopo, South Africa. The afternoon air shimmered with heat as a safari vehicle rolled slowly along a dirt track, its passengers scanning the acacia-dotted landscape for wildlife. Marek Volin was a 46-year-old Czech-born mechanical technician who had spent the past decade working short-term industrial contracts throughout Germany. This safari was his first trip to Africa, booked as a budget add-on during a 3-day business layover in Johannesburg. His co-workers had described him as practical and direct, someone who approached problems with mechanical logic. Fellow tourists on the safari would later tell investigators that Marek had been dismissive of safety protocols from the start, repeatedly commenting that predators were lazy during the day and that guides exaggerated dangers to maintain control. He carried a small handheld camcorder and had been filming constantly, stating he wanted to capture rare moments his friends back home would never see. His confidence around wildlife bordered on recklessness, and he had already been reminded twice to remain seated during animal sightings. The reserve stretched across 15,000 acres of bushveld, characterized by tall golden grass, scattered thorn trees, and rocky outcroppings. African lions are among the most formidable predators on the continent, with females typically weighing between 260 and 400 pounds and possessing explosive speed over short distances. Their hunting strategy relies on ambush and concealment. Female lions do the majority of hunting for their pride, using tall grass and terrain features to remain invisible until the moment of attack. Their bite force exceeds 650 pounds per square inch, concentrated through powerful jaws designed to crush vertebrae and windpipes. Most critically, Lionesses with cubs are exceptionally dangerous, their maternal instinct overriding any natural wariness of humans or vehicles. The safari vehicle had stopped after the guide spotted a lion cub partially tangled in thorn brush, approximately 40 yards from the track. The young animal was bleating loudly, its cries carrying across the afternoon stillness. The guide immediately warned everyone to remain seated and explained in clear terms that the mother was almost certainly nearby, hidden in the grass. He radioed to other guides in the area, informing them of the situation and their stationary position. Merrick began filming the cub, zooming in on its struggles. After several minutes, he became visibly agitated, loudly insisting that the cub looked injured and that someone should intervene. Other tourists told him to listen to the guide. The guide repeated his warning, explaining that approaching would likely trigger a defensive attack and that the cub was not actually trapped, merely momentarily caught. Marek continued arguing, his camera still recording, stating that the guide's job was to protect tourists, not abandon helpless animals. Then, despite the guide's explicit command to stay seated, Marek opened the side door and stepped out onto the dirt, keeping his camera running as he walked toward the cub. The recovered footage showed everything. As Marek approached to within 15 yards, the cub abruptly stopped vocalizing. The video shook slightly as he stepped closer, using his foot to brush aside low branches. The camera's microphone picked up the guide shouting for him to get back in the vehicle. Then, barely audible beneath the sound of Marek's breathing, there was a low, rumbling growl. The lioness struck in a rapid defensive lunge to recover her cub, exploding from grass that had concealed her completely. She covered the distance in less than 2 seconds, launching herself at Marek's back with her full 330-pound weight. The impact drove him face-first into the ground. Screams erupted from the safari vehicle as the lioness clamped her massive jaws onto the back of Marek's neck and upper spine, her teeth penetrating deep into tissue and vertebrae. She dragged him several feet through the dirt, her powerful neck muscles shaking him. Marek's arms moved weakly, his fingers scraping at the ground in futile attempts to crawl. The lioness repositioned her grip, biting down again with crushing force on his shoulder and upper back. Blood darkened the earth beneath them. The cub, now silent, retreated deeper into the brush. The lioness delivered a final bite to Marek's neck, a technique lions use to sever the spinal cord. Johan radioed reserve control immediately, reporting a fatal attack and requesting armed backup. The lioness remained near the body for several minutes, before slowly walking back into the tall grass, still watching the vehicle. Armed rangers arrived 18 minutes later, approaching cautiously after confirming the lioness had withdrawn to a distance. Marek Volin was pronounced dead at the scene. The coroner's report listed cause of death as massive trauma to the cervical spine and neck, with secondary injuries including puncture wounds to the upper back, shoulder, and skull. Severe blood loss and spinal cord transection indicated death likely occurred within 2 to 3 minutes of the initial attack. The reserve issued a brief statement emphasizing that the deceased had violated explicit safety protocols. No criminal charges were filed. Investigators secured the original camera media, and the device was later returned to Marek's family after review. It was June 12, 2013, when Dorian Hale, Mira Sullivan, Keaton Rusk, and Nyla Crest arrived at a dry season waterhole in the East African savannah, their low, doorless, open-top safari truck positioned for what they believed would be spectacular wildlife footage. Dorian, a 38-year-old lead influencer, had built his brand on staging dramatic safari content that pushed boundaries. Mira, 31, was a wildlife photographer seeking ground-level shots that would set her portfolio apart from typical safari images. Keaton, 28, constantly encouraged risky stunts for views, while Nyla, 27, managed their social media updates and filmed behind-the-scenes content. The four had collaborated on multiple projects, each one more daring than the last. The waterhole sat in a shallow depression, surrounded by tall, golden grass that swayed in the hot breeze. During the dry season, it became a crucial gathering point for wildlife, which also meant predators often rested nearby, concealed and difficult to spot from only a short distance away. As they approached, The group noticed several vague shapes in the grass, but dismissed them as rocks or termite mounds. Heat shimmer distorted the view, and the driver slowed uneasily, scanning left and right. He warned that anything indistinct near a waterhole could be dangerous and suggested keeping distance, reminding them to remain seated inside the vehicle. Dorian insisted. When the driver hesitated again, Dorian pressed harder, saying they needed the closer angle and threatening to leave a negative review and cancel payment if the guide refused. Reluctantly, and after repeating his warning, the driver eased the vehicle forward and stopped, while cameras came up and Nyla lifted her phone to record. A lion pride was resting in the tall grass in partial shade. African lions are ambush predators that rely on concealment and explosive speed, and at busy dry season waterholes, some prides grow accustomed to vehicles, though they still react strongly to people who separate from them or move unpredictably nearby. The first mistake came when Mira stepped down from the vehicle to grab what she thought would be a quick ground-level shot before the driver could stop her. The sudden movement on the ground at close range triggered an immediate response. A nearby lioness burst from cover and closed the short distance in seconds. A heavy forepaw slammed Mira down before the jaws closed on her throat, the lioness maintaining the suffocating hold typical of lion kills as Mira struggled beneath her weight. The attack unfolded almost instantly, her movements slowing as the grip held. The truck erupted in shouting and frantic motion. Lions in the grass lifted their heads and stood, alert and agitated by the noise. The pride shifted uneasily, tension spreading through the group as multiple sudden movements registered at once. Dorian, standing upright above the roofline to film, tried to pull back in alarm. He lost his balance and tumbled awkwardly over the low side of the open vehicle, hitting the ground hard beside it. His fall and thrashing drew attention from two nearby lionesses already stimulated by the disturbance. One rushed in and seized high on his shoulder and torso, pulling him down, while the second hovered close and bit when he tried to rise. Their reaction appeared driven by his exposed movement on the ground, rather than any focus on the vehicle itself. For several chaotic moments, the pride milled in agitation, some backing off, others pacing, confusion stretching the danger across several frantic minutes rather than a single instant. Seeing both Mira and Dorian down, Keaton panicked and bolted from the opposite side. His sudden sprint triggered a chase response from a large male lion resting farther out in the grass. The male surged forward, overtook him within seconds, and swiped him to the ground before clamping a crushing bite across the upper back and neck, maintaining pressure in the instinctive manner used to subdue fleeing prey. Inside the vehicle, Nyla screamed and scrambled in terror. Instead of dropping low into the footwell, she climbed onto the seat and leaned far over the open side toward the front. Her torso hung almost completely outside the low, doorless frame, head and shoulders dipping well below the roofline and into striking reach. A nearby lioness, already keyed up by the chaos and movement, lunged upward. Her forepaws struck the vehicle's side as her jaws caught Nyla high at the neck and shoulder. The force dragged Nyla off balance and pulled her from the opening. She released briefly to reposition once Nyla hit the ground, then clamped again as the motion subsided. Afterward, the pride did not attack the truck further. Instead, as is typical, their focus remained on the individuals on the ground. For several tense minutes, the lions clustered nearby, watchful and alert, occasionally lifting their heads toward the vehicle and surrounding grass. Only after the scene had gone still for some time did they begin dragging the bodies intermittently into the tall grass, pausing often to scan their surroundings before moving deeper into cover. The driver, shaking badly and fighting panic, avoided sudden movement while the lions remained close. When the animals shifted their attention fully to the carcasses and moved farther into the grass, he restarted the engine and drove rapidly toward the nearest ranger station, radio crackling as he reported the attack in a strained voice. A response team arrived from a station nearly 70 kilometers away, reaching the site within roughly 2 hours, but could only recover remains after the pride had moved off. Investigators later concluded the incident likely involved multiple safety breaches, approaching too close to concealed predators at a dry season water source, pressuring the driver to ignore caution, exiting the vehicle, and repeatedly exposing upper bodies outside the open truck. Actions that removed the protective effect vehicles normally provide and contributed to the escalating chain of events. It was March 12, 2018, and the harsh drought conditions across South Africa's Eastern Cape had left the remote livestock facility struggling to protect their remaining cattle from increasingly desperate predators. Sipho Mthembu, a 43-year-old night watchman, patrolled the perimeter of the farm on foot, armed only with a flashlight and a traditional knob carry stick that had belonged to his grandfather. The facility housed over 200 head of cattle, representing the life savings of several local families who had pooled their resources to survive the worst drought in decades. Sipho had been working as a livestock guardian for 15 years, protecting herds from jackals, caracals, and the occasional leopard that ventured down from the nearby mountains. His reputation for dedication had earned him the trust of the farming cooperative, who relied on his vigilance to protect their animals during the vulnerable nighttime hours. The drought had forced many predators closer to human settlements, as their natural prey became scarce, creating dangerous conditions that tested even experienced guardians. The facility's security measures were basic, but had proven effective for years, consisting of thornbush barriers and Sipho's nightly patrols around the livestock enclosures. Recent weeks had seen increased predator activity, with several cattle killed by what appeared to be hyenas that had ventured unusually far from their normal territory. What made this particular night different was the discovery of a freshly killed calf just outside the main enclosure, its carcass partially consumed in a manner that indicated hyena activity. Spotted hyenas are primarily scavengers that occasionally hunt, with females being larger and more aggressive than males. These powerful carnivores possess bone-crushing jaws capable of exerting over 1,100 pounds of pressure per square inch, allowing them to consume every part of their prey, including bones and hooves. During drought conditions, hyenas become more desperate and willing to take risks they would normally avoid, including approaching human settlements in search of easy food sources. Sipho's plan was to remove the carcass and dispose of it away from the livestock area, preventing the hyenas from returning and potentially attacking more cattle. He had successfully used this strategy before, dragging dead animals to a disposal site several hundred meters from the enclosures where scavengers could feed without threatening the living herd. As Sipho dragged the heavy carcass across the rocky terrain toward the disposal site, he failed to notice the loose stones and uneven ground that made footing treacherous in the darkness. The accident occurred when Sipho stepped on a loose stone while pulling the carcass up a small incline, causing him to lose his balance and fall backward onto the rocky ground. His head struck a large stone with tremendous force, leaving him dazed, disoriented, and bleeding heavily as he drifted in and out of consciousness, suffering severe head trauma that left him motionless beside the cattle carcass. His flashlight rolled away into the darkness, leaving both Sipho and the dead animal in complete blackness. Two spotted hyenas, a mated pair that had been following the scent of the dead calf, arrived at the scene approximately 20 minutes after Sipho's fall. The predators had been cautious about approaching while the human was active, but his sudden stillness and the overwhelming scent of blood from both the carcass and his head wound triggered their scavenging instincts. The larger female hyena began feeding on the cattle carcass, while her mate investigated Sipho's motionless form, drawn by the scent of fresh blood from his head wound. When the male hyena began scavenging behavior on what he perceived as another food source, Sipho regained partial consciousness and attempted to move, triggering a defensive response from the startled predator. The hyena's powerful jaws clamped down on Sipho's arm and shoulder, causing massive tissue damage and blood loss. Sipho's weakened struggles and cries for help only intensified the hyena's defensive behavior, as the predator perceived the injured human as a threat to his feeding opportunity. The attack lasted in less than a minute before Sipho's movements ceased due to blood loss and trauma from both the head injury and the hyena's powerful bite. The investigation revealed that Sipho had died from a combination of head trauma from his fall and massive blood loss from the hyena attack. The predators had been engaged in opportunistic scavenging rather than hunting behavior, taking advantage of an injured human who could no longer defend himself. The incident prompted enhanced safety protocols for livestock guardians, including requirements for two-person patrols and improved communication systems. Sipho's death highlighted the increasing dangers faced faced by rural communities during drought conditions, when desperate wildlife ventures closer to human settlements in search of food and water. The farming cooperative implemented new predator management strategies and provided better equipment for their remaining guardians. The incident became a cautionary tale about the importance of safety protocols when working alone in areas with dangerous wildlife. It was July 12, 2016, and the vast wetlands of Brazil's Pantanal stretched endlessly under the scorching South American sun as Enzo Vasquez navigated his small boat through the maze of channels and lagoons that made this region one of the world's most biodiverse ecosystems. The 41-year-old freelance nature photographer from São Paulo was working on a magazine assignment about jaguar conservation, desperately needing this project to succeed after months of financial struggle. Enzo had been in the field for 2 weeks, camping in remote areas and following jaguar tracks through the gallery forests and wetlands that provided perfect habitat for South America's largest cat. His small following among wildlife photography enthusiasts wasn't enough to provide steady income, and this assignment represented his best opportunity to establish himself among the world's top wildlife photographers. The Pantanal's dry season had created ideal conditions for jaguar photography, as the big cats were forced to concentrate around permanent water sources and established hunting territories. Enzo had been following reports from local guides about a large male jaguar that had been seen regularly along a particular stretch of river, hunting caimans and capybaras in the shallow water. Jaguars are the third largest cats in the world and the apex predators of South America, with adult males weighing up to 250 pounds and possessing incredibly powerful jaws capable of crushing bone and skull. Unlike other large cats, jaguars are excellent swimmers and often hunt in water, using their devastating bite force to kill caimans and other aquatic prey with crushing precision. Enzo finally spotted the magnificent male jaguar resting on a fallen tree trunk near the riverbank, his rosette-spotted coat providing perfect camouflage among the dappled shadows of the gallery forest. The photographer began capturing images from his boat, but the distance and angle weren't providing the dramatic close-up shots he needed for his magazine assignment. Against his better judgment, Enzo decided to approach the jaguar on foot through the shallow water at the river's edge. He had photographed leopards and lions in Africa using similar techniques, but he fatally misjudged the situation. Rather than providing an escape route, the water actually gave the jaguar a significant advantage. This was the big cat's preferred hunting environment, where his swimming ability and aquatic hunting skills made him even more dangerous. The 220-pound jaguar had been aware of Enzo's presence since his arrival, but had tolerated the distant observation from the boat. However, when the photographer entered the water and began approaching on foot, the big cat's territorial instincts identified this as a direct challenge that required immediate response. Jaguars are ambush predators that prefer to attack from concealment, and the male used the riverbank vegetation to position himself for a surprise assault. Enzo was focused entirely on his camera settings and composition, unaware that he was being stalked by one of South America's most efficient killers. The jaguar's attack came without warning, as the big cat launched himself from the riverbank, striking Enzo from behind as the photographer waded through the knee-deep water. Enzo had no time to react, as 220 pounds of muscle and fury drove him face-first into the muddy river bottom. The jaguar's powerful jaws clamped down on Enzo's skull with a crushing bite to the head, causing catastrophic brain injury. The jaguar's devastating bite, evolved specifically for crushing turtle shells and caiman skulls, caused rapid incapacitation with the efficiency that had made his species the apex predator of South America's waterways. Within moments, the jaguar began dragging Enzo's body toward the dense vegetation along the riverbank, his natural instincts driving him to cache his kill in a secure location away from potential scavengers. The big cat's powerful build allowed him to move his victim through the water and into the gallery forest with surprising ease. Enzo's boat was found drifting empty downstream the following day by local fishermen who reported the discovery to authorities. Search teams located Enzo's remains 2 days later, cached beneath fallen logs and vegetation approximately 50 meters from the attack site, consistent with typical jaguar feeding behavior. His damaged camera equipment was found nearby, nearby, partially submerged in the muddy riverbank. Local guides later confirmed the area was an active jaguar hunting corridor, known for territorial male jaguars that aggressively defended their prime fishing spots. The investigation revealed that Enzo had violated basic safety protocols for photographing dangerous wildlife by approaching a territorial jaguar in its preferred hunting environment on foot. The incident led to enhanced safety briefings for photographers working in jaguar territory and stricter guidelines for approaching big cats in their natural habitat. It was September 3rd, 2016, the South African high-veld winter giving way to early spring warmth as midday sun beat down on Kruger National Park, in full view of multiple witnesses and a running dashcam. A multi-ton animal decides a human presence is a threat worth eliminating. Leanne de Kock was a 52-year-old primary school administrator from Bloemfontein, known among her colleagues for her methodical approach to managing student records and her tendency to defer to authority figures. She had never been on safari before. Her sister-in-law had organized the extended family trip, booking a guided day tour through one of the park's smaller operators. Leanne had expressed nervousness about the wildlife, but trusted the guide implicitly, believing his experience would keep them safe. That morning, she had asked several times whether it was safe to be so close to the animals, but when reassured by the guide, she nodded and said nothing further. African bush elephants are the largest land animals on Earth, with bulls weighing up to 13,000 pounds and standing over 12 feet tall at the shoulder. Their trunks are composed of thousands of dense muscle bundles, capable of lifting several hundred pounds while remaining precise enough to grasp small vegetation. Despite their size, elephants can charge at speeds of up to 25 miles per hour. Male elephants experience musth, a physiological state marked by temporal gland secretions running down the sides of the face, continuous urine dribbling, heightened restlessness, and sharply increased aggression. During these episodes, which can last months, bulls become unpredictable and hyper-aggressive, attacking anything perceived as a threat. The guide had stopped just outside a designated picnic area, despite posted warnings stating that exiting vehicles beyond marked zones was prohibited. A bull elephant was visible approximately 70 yards away, partially obscured by the trees. Several family members had pointed it out immediately. The animal was feeding, its ears loosely flapping against its body as it cooled itself in the heat. The guide assured everyone it was fine, that the elephant was far enough away and calm. A family in a nearby SUV had parked to observe from inside their vehicle, their dashcam running as they recorded the scenery. As Leanne's group unpacked sandwiches and coolers, spreading a blanket on the ground, the elephant slowly turned its massive head toward the vehicles. Its ears, which had been relaxed against its body, suddenly spread outward and remained rigid, a warning signal that precedes aggression in elephants. The dashcam footage, later provided to park authorities, captured the charge from start to impact, showing what happened next with devastating clarity. The elephant suddenly charged, its ears flared wide, trunk initially held tight against its chest. People heard the sound of its approach, a low rumbling bellow combined with the thunder of feet striking packed earth. They reacted chaotically. Several family members lunged for open vehicle doors, while others screamed and stumbled backward in panic. Leanne froze near the rear door of the tour van, approximately 8 feet from safety. Whether she was paralyzed by fear or simply unable to process the speed of the charge, she remained motionless for nearly 2 seconds, an eternity in the context of a charging elephant. The bull reached her in moments, its trunk snapping outward to shove and hook her around the torso just below the ribcage. The force lifted her completely off the ground, her legs dangling as she was raised roughly 5 feet in the air. The elephant slammed her against the side of the SUV with tremendous force. The sound of impact, a sharp metallic deformation followed by a dull, heavy thud. The vehicle's side panel visibly dented inward. The elephant yanked her back and drove her forward again using its head and shoulder, her body striking the vehicle a second time with even greater force. Her head snapped violently on impact. She fell to the ground when the animal disengaged, landing in a crumpled heap. The footage showed her attempting to rise, one arm pushing weakly against the dirt before the elephant surged forward again, ramming her prone body with its skull and upper tusk base, sending her sliding several feet across the clearing. The bull then stepped forward and pressed a massive front foot down onto her upper torso, pinning her briefly against the ground. After approximately 8 seconds, the elephant stepped back as the guide hesitated before finally revving the engine and shouting, the sudden noise drawing the animal's attention away. Leanne had stopped moving by then, her body twisted at an unnatural angle. A German tourist in the nearby SUV called emergency services. Park rangers arrived minutes later, but Leanne showed no signs of life when they reached her. The medical examiner's report listed massive internal trauma as the cause of death, including multiple fractured ribs, a ruptured spleen, severe head trauma, and a broken neck. The guide's permit was suspended indefinitely following investigation by authorities. Leanne's family declined all media interviews, but released a brief statement through their attorney requesting privacy. The dashcam footage was sealed under court order, was used as evidence during the investigation. It was September 7th, 2020, and the remote research station in Tanzania's Ruaha ecosystem operated under strict protocols designed to protect staff from the dangerous wildlife that surrounded their isolated facility. Grace Molel, a 24-year-old research assistant from Arusha, had been working at the station for 8 months, helping to collect data on carnivore populations for an international conservation organization. The facility consisted of several prefabricated buildings surrounded by a basic fence, located 15 kilometers from the nearest village in one of Africa's most pristine wilderness areas. Grace had earned her degree in wildlife biology from the University of Dar es Salaam before joining the research team as part of a program designed to train local scientists in field research techniques. Her supervisors respected her dedication and attention to detail, qualities that had made her an invaluable member of the small team, studying the ecosystem's predator-prey relationships. The research station housed 6 staff members who worked in rotating shifts to maintain continuous data collection throughout the year. The facility's location provided excellent access to study sites, but also meant that dangerous wildlife regularly moved through the area, including lions, leopards, and a large population of spotted hyenas. Safety protocols required staff to remain within the fenced compound during nighttime hours, with bathroom facilities located in a separate building approximately 30 meters from the main dormitory. Grace was known for her early morning routines, often rising before dawn to review camera trap footage and prepare field notes for the day's observations. What Grace didn't know was that a female spotted hyena with 2 young cubs had established a den site just outside the research station's perimeter fence, drawn by the facility's waste disposal practices and the relative safety the human presence provided from other predators. The mother hyena had become increasingly protective as her cubs grew larger and more mobile, viewing any intrusion near her den site as a potential threat that required aggressive defense. Spotted hyenas are highly intelligent predators with complex social structures, but females with young cubs become extremely aggressive when defending their offspring. These powerful carnivores possess the strongest bite force of any mammal and will attack perceived threats with devastating ferocity when their maternal instincts are triggered. Mother hyenas are known to be particularly dangerous during the first few months after giving birth, when their cubs are most vulnerable to predation. Grace's fatal mistake came during the early morning hours when she left the dormitory to use the bathroom facilities, following a route she had taken safely dozens of times before. The night was particularly dark due to cloud cover, and Grace's flashlight provided only limited visibility as she walked along the familiar path between buildings. She had grown comfortable with the routine and was not paying close attention to her surroundings as she approached the bathroom building. The mother hyena had been foraging near the compound's fence line when Grace's movement triggered her protective instincts. Her path unknowingly brought her into the defensive radius of a hidden den site just beyond the fence line. The hyena interpreted Grace's approach as a potential threat to her cubs and immediately moved to intercept what she perceived as an intruder in her territory. Grace remained unaware of the danger until she heard the distinctive whooping call that indicated an agitated hyena nearby. When Grace realized she was being confronted by a large hyena and attempted to retreat toward the dormitory, her sudden movement and obvious fear triggered the mother's defensive attack response. The hyena charged across the short distance separating them, her powerful jaws clamping down on Grace's leg and bringing her to the ground before she could reach safety. Grace's screams echoed across the compound as the hyena's bone-crushing bite caused immediate fractures and massive tissue damage. The defensive attack unfolded in a violent burst lasting under a minute, long enough to inflict catastrophic injuries. Grace's injuries from the powerful bite caused severe blood loss and trauma that quickly overwhelmed her system, while her weakened struggles only reinforced the hyena's perception that continued aggression was necessary to protect her offspring. The investigation revealed that the mother hyena had established her den site within the research station's immediate vicinity, creating a dangerous situation that had gone undetected by the facility's staff. Grace's death prompted immediate reviews of safety protocols at remote research facilities throughout East Africa, with new requirements for enhanced perimeter monitoring and wildlife detection systems. The incident highlighted the importance of understanding local wildlife behavior when establishing research facilities in dangerous areas. Grace's family received support from the International Conservation Organization. The research station implemented comprehensive wildlife management protocols and relocated to a safer site that provided better separation from dangerous predator populations. It was August 14, 2016. The sun rose over Ruaha National Park's dry savanna, casting long shadows through the acacia trees as dust hung motionless in the air. At the edge of a small tourist camp, where the scent of cooking fires mixed with the earthy smell of drought-hardened soil, Elias Corvin would make a life-changing decision. Elias, 29, from Dar es Salaam, had a complicated past. In his early 20s, he spent 3 years poaching in southern Tanzania before a close call with park rangers made him quit. Since then, he became fascinated with observing the animals he once hunted, keeping a handwritten diary of encounters. Local guides had mixed opinions. Some admired his change, others distrusted his reckless behavior. He traveled often to national parks, frequently pushing boundaries respected by experienced trackers. He had arrived at Ruaha 3 days earlier with Jonas Mbeki, a 31-year-old guide in training who had known Elias for 2 years. Jonas often accompanied him on these excursions, partly out of friendship and partly out of concern for Elias's tendency to ignore safety protocols. That morning, Elias had mentioned wanting to track leopards near the camp's perimeter, an area guides had specifically warned visitors to avoid during early hours, when predators were most active. African leopards are solitary ambush hunters. Unlike lions that hunt in coordinated groups or cheetahs that rely on speed, leopards are stealth killers that strike from elevated positions or dense cover. Their bite is a very powerful bite, capable of puncturing the neck and crushing vertebrae, concentrated through inch-long canines designed to puncture the throat or spine of prey. They can drag kills twice their body weight into trees and are known for their ability to remain motionless for hours before attacking with explosive speed, accelerating to 35 miles per hour in seconds. At 6:30 a.m., Elias left the main camp without informing the head guide, slipping past the marked boundary rope that designated safe areas. Jonas followed approximately 20 feet behind, carrying only a walking stick and his concerns. Camp staff noticed Elias's absence during the morning head count, but they knew him personally and assumed he was just briefly exploring the immediate vicinity. The two men moved through increasingly thick vegetation, pushing aside low branches and stepping over exposed roots. Jonas said that Elias was searching the ground for tracks, his attention focused downward rather than scanning the environment around him. Rangers had specifically briefed all camp visitors the previous evening about increased leopard activity near the northern fig grove, exactly where Elias was now heading. As they approached a massive fig tree roughly 200 feet beyond the camp boundary, Jonas noticed movement in the canopy above. He called out a warning, Elias's name followed by an urgent alert, but Elias was bent low, examining what appeared to be fresh scrape marks on the tree trunk. He straightened and tilted his head upward, squinting into the leaves just as the leopard shifted position on a thick branch 12 feet above. The attack happened almost without sound or warning. The leopard dropped from the branch in a controlled fall, landing squarely on Elias's shoulders with all 4 paws extended. The impact drove Elias forward onto his knees. His cry of shock cut short as the animal's weight, roughly 140 pounds, forced the air from his lungs. Curved claws, each over an inch long, punctured through his shirt and into the flesh of his upper back and shoulders, anchoring the predator to him. Jonas ran forward immediately, shouting and swinging his walking stick at the leopard's hindquarters. The animal twisted with terrifying speed, its jaws already clamped around the back of Elias's neck. Elias tried to reach behind himself, his hands grasping uselessly at spotted fur as the leopard's canines sank deeper into the vulnerable space between his skull and spine. Blood darkened his collar within seconds. Jonas later estimated the struggle lasted about a minute, though subjective time under extreme stress is unreliable. Elias's attempts to stand failed, as the leopard's weight and positioning kept him pinned forward. His movements became erratic, then weakened rapidly as the bite compressed critical structures in his neck. The leopard bit Elias's throat from the side. Jonas, seeing severe bleeding, backed away and ran toward camp, shouting for help. The leopard dragged Elias several feet to the fig tree before retreating. Rangers arrived minutes later in an SUV, finding Elias face down beneath the tree amid disturbed soil and blood. Jonas sat 30 feet away, visibly shaking, still gripping his walking stick. The coroner's report listed the cause of death as massive hemorrhage and spinal cord damage resulting from multiple bite wounds to the neck and throat. Elias's body was transported from the park later that afternoon under ranger escort. His family in Dar es Salaam received notification by evening. Jonas refused to return to guide training for nearly 8 months. He eventually resumed his education, but avoided assignments in Ruaha. It was April 23, 2016, and the pre-monsoon heat had settled over central India. A municipal zoo on the outskirts of a mid-sized city in Madhya Pradesh sat baking under a relentless sun. Aging enclosures, cracked service roads, and a budget shrinking by the year, it remained open largely because closing it would require relocating animals to already overcapacity facilities. Tanushri Bogale was a 43-year-old senior large cat keeper who had worked at the facility for 19 years. She was the most experienced carnivore handler on staff and the primary keeper responsible for managing the big cats through shift procedures, feeding protocols, and enclosure maintenance. She had submitted transfer requests to better-funded zoos twice in the previous 3 years. Both were denied due to staffing shortages. The carnivore section was physically isolated from the rest of the grounds, separated by a service road and a maintenance yard. Radio communication in the section was unreliable, often requiring staff to rely on scheduled check-ins rather than continuous contact. Standard operating procedure required 2 keepers present during any large cat enclosure entry, but budget cuts 6 months earlier had reduced the section from 4 keepers to 2. Tanushri routinely entered enclosures alone, a practice that had become informally normalized, with staff and supervisors treating it as an unavoidable workaround rather than a safety violation. The hydraulic sliding gate on the Bengal tiger's shift enclosure had been reported malfunctioning 4 separate times over the previous 14 months, including twice by Tanushri herself. Maintenance logs recovered after the incident confirmed all 4 reports. Each time, the gate had been manually forced back into position rather than properly repaired. The gate's manual locking pin, designed as a secondary fail-safe, had been documented as failing to seat properly, a known issue that staff compensated for by relying on hydraulic pressure alone. Lockout procedures existed on paper, but were routinely bypassed. Budget requests for a full overhaul had been submitted to municipal administrators and denied twice. The tiger was a 12-year-old male Bengal, weighing approximately 440 to 480 pounds, housed at the facility since age 3. There were no prior incidents involving direct keeper contact, though the animal had never been in uncontrolled close proximity to a human. That morning, Tanushri initiated the standard shift procedure, moving the tiger into the holding area via the hydraulic gate. She checked the gate from the keeper corridor, but the holding area was partially shadowed and the sightline obstructed by a concrete partition. Full visual confirmation required stepping to a secondary angle, a step often skipped during routine shifts due to time pressure and familiarity. Investigators noted this was consistent with established routine and concluded she likely believed the tiger had fully shifted based on expectation rather than full visual confirmation. She entered the main enclosure with cleaning equipment and connected a hose line to a fitting along the far wall, approximately 25 feet from the keeper access door. The cleaning pattern required her to work facing that wall with her back to the holding area gate. The faulty hydraulic system gradually lost pressure, allowing the gate to drift open in a slow, uneven movement, with minimal mechanical sound, potentially masked by the noise of running water. The tiger re-entered the main enclosure once the opening widened enough to allow passage, while Tanushree worked near the far wall. Investigators estimated that this overlap, Tanushree and the tiger occupying the same enclosure without her knowledge, likely lasted only a matter of seconds, possibly just moments, though the exact duration could not be determined. Investigators concluded that once the tiger re-entered undetected, the risk of a fatal encounter was extremely high. Bengal tigers are among the most powerful ambush predators on Earth, with adult males commonly exceeding 450 pounds and measuring over 9 feet from nose to tail. Their hunting strategy relies on a short, explosive rush from concealment, typically targeting the rear or flank of prey. Their bite force is capable of delivering a crushing bite to the neck that can damage the spinal cord or cause rapid suffocation. The killing method designed to cause rapid loss of consciousness, often within seconds to under a minute, depending on bite placement and compression, through oxygen deprivation or spinal trauma. Even in captive environments, tigers retain these predatory instincts. A human on foot, unaware and oriented away, presents key visual and behavioral cues similar to natural prey. Investigators determined the tiger likely approached from the rear, using terrain features and a concrete enrichment structure as partial cover, behavior consistent with stalking patterns retained even in captive-born animals. The initial strike came from behind. Evidence indicated the tiger closed the final distance in a single explosive rush, bringing Tanushree to the ground before she could reach the keeper access door. Cleaning equipment was found scattered in a pattern consistent with sudden, violent disruption. Movement patterns suggested a brief attempt to reach the door following the initial impact. The distance covered was estimated at under 10 feet. The fatal injury was consistent with a sustained bite to the back of the neck. The injuries indicated rapid loss of consciousness. The attack likely unfolded in a matter of seconds rather than minutes, though the exact duration could not be definitively determined. The exact duration of overlap remains unknown, but investigators noted it may have exceeded the duration of the attack itself. The tiger retreated to the far side of the enclosure and was observed pacing when staff arrived, a behavior associated with stress, stimulation, and heightened arousal in captive big cats. Devrath Khandu, a 31-year-old junior keeper, arrived for his staggered shift approximately 20 minutes after the estimated time of the attack, based on scene condition and shift logs. No check-in was recorded during that interval, and staggered shift timing meant no other staff were expected in the section. Khandu discovered the open gate and the scene simultaneously. Veterinary staff secured and later sedated the tiger to allow safe recovery of the body. The investigation confirmed the hydraulic gate failure as the primary cause, with all 4 prior maintenance reports entering the public record. Municipal authorities launched a facility-wide safety review. The tiger was not destroyed. Investigators determined the animal had behaved consistently with natural predatory instincts, and that the primary fault was infrastructural and administrative. The carnivore section was closed pending a complete overhaul of all shift gate mechanisms. It was August 19th, 2018, at a small privately permitted big cat facility on rural property outside Statesboro, Georgia. The facility housed several exotic cats in individual chain-link enclosures arranged along a gravel path on approximately 12 acres of pine flatwoods. It ran an informal paid tour program that had been operating for several years without major incident. Rael Fenwick was 27 years old and from Savannah. He had been running an outdoor and wildlife channel for about 18 months built around visits to small exotic animal facilities, roadside zoos, and private collections across the Southeast. His content had a consistent pattern, each visit pushed slightly further than the last. He had reached through fencing at 2 other facilities in the months prior, touching animals without incident both times, and had posted those clips framing the lack of consequence as proof that the risks were overstated. He had no animal handling background of any kind. He had been building toward the stunt for weeks. His last 3 videos at exotic animal facilities had each pushed closer to direct contact, and the leopard feeding interruption was the next logical step in that progression. The facility's tour guide had given a verbal briefing at the start of the visit prohibiting contact with any enclosure fencing, and had reminded Rael of the rules at 2 earlier enclosures after observing him moving too close. When the group reached the leopard enclosure, the guide moved ahead with the rest of the tour, leaving Rael momentarily alone at the fence. The leopard typically weighs between 66 and 176 pounds, but is pound for pound among the strongest of the large cats, capable of carrying prey heavier than itself vertically into trees. Their bite force is estimated at approximately 310 pounds per square inch. Leopards are among the most food-possessive of the large cats. Interrupting one mid-meal is one of the most reliably dangerous things a person can do in proximity to one. When a leopard seizes prey by the neck, it applies a sustained compressive bite, targeting the cervical vertebrae, and the lateral shaking motion that follows is a kill mechanism designed to sever or displace the spinal cord. Captive leopards retain this instinct fully, regardless of their exposure to humans. The resident leopard was a 7-year-old female that had been at the facility since she was 2 years old. She weighed approximately 112 pounds, had a documented history of fence-directed charging at unfamiliar visitors, and had shown consistent food-guarding behavior since adolescence. Her feeding bowl had been placed approximately 8 inches from the interior fence line as part of the facility's standard feeding routine, and she was actively feeding when Rael approached. Rael knelt at the fence at 3:44 p.m. and reached his right arm through a chain-link opening up to the elbow, making contact with the edge of the feeding bowl. He began pulling it toward the fence. The leopard left the bowl and lunged at the fence in a single motion. Her right forepaw came through an adjacent opening and made contact with Rael's forearm, pulling it further into the fence and drawing his right shoulder and the right side of his neck flush against the chain link. She bit through the fence opening, making contact with the right side of his neck at the base of the skull. The bite was deep and sustained. She then performed a sharp lateral shaking motion while maintaining the bite, lasting approximately 3 to 4 seconds. Rael went limp. The leopard released and moved to the rear of the enclosure. The tour guide heard the disturbance from approximately 40 feet away and ran back to the enclosure. Rael was on the ground with his right arm still partially through the fence opening, not moving. The guide called for emergency services at 3:46 p.m. and remained outside the enclosure until they arrived. Paramedics arrived at 4:09 p.m., 23 minutes after the call. They documented deep lacerations to the right lateral neck, a fracture of the C2 vertebra, and injury to the cervical spinal cord consistent with a high-force rotational mechanism. Rael had no pulse on their arrival. Resuscitation was attempted at the scene, but was unsuccessful. He was pronounced dead at 4:19 p.m. The official cause of death was cervical spinal cord injury, resulting from a large animal bite and associated rotational force, consistent with the neck bite and shake pattern documented in leopard predatory behavior. A state wildlife inspector visited the facility the following morning. The leopard was not euthanized. The facility's permit was placed under review, and public tours were suspended indefinitely. No criminal charges were filed against the facility or its staff. It was October 15, 2019, and the late afternoon sun cast golden light across the vast savanna of Kenya's Masai Mara National Reserve as 32-year-old David Chen positioned his telephoto lens to capture a clan of spotted hyenas feeding on a wildebeest carcass. The professional wildlife photographer from Singapore had been documenting African predators for a prestigious nature magazine, spending 3 weeks in the reserve to capture images that would illustrate an upcoming defining feature on scavenger behavior. His guide had positioned their vehicle approximately 100 meters from the feeding site, following park regulations designed to minimize human interference with natural wildlife behavior. David had built his reputation photographing dangerous wildlife across 6 continents, with his images appearing in National Geographic and other leading publications. His technical expertise and willingness to work in challenging conditions had earned him assignments that other photographers avoided, including extended periods documenting predator behavior in some of Africa's most remote locations. The Masai Mara assignment represented the culmination of his career goals, providing access to one of the world's premier wildlife destinations during the peak migration season. The feeding clan consisted of 12 adult hyenas and several juveniles, representing one of the largest groups David had encountered during his time in the reserve. His guide had warned him about the unpredictable nature of feeding hyenas, emphasizing the importance of maintaining distance and avoiding any actions that might be perceived as threatening. What David didn't fully appreciate was that the hyena clan was engaged in competitive feeding behavior around a fresh kill, creating heightened aggression levels that made them particularly dangerous to any perceived threats. Spotted hyenas feeding in groups exhibit complex social hierarchies and territorial behaviors that can escalate to extreme aggression when threatened. During competitive feeding situations, clan members become highly agitated and will attack any perceived threat to their food source with coordinated group behavior. The combination of multiple adults and the presence of juveniles creates particularly dangerous conditions, as protective instincts override normal caution around humans. David's fatal decision came when he left the safety of the vehicle to approach the feeding site on foot, believing that his experience with wildlife photography had prepared him to handle the situation safely. He had observed the clan for over an hour and interpreted their focus on feeding as an indication that they would ignore his presence if he moved slowly and quietly. His guide's protests were overruled by David's confidence in his ability to read animal behavior and his determination to capture award-winning images. David managed to approach within 30 meters of the feeding clan before the dominant female noticed his presence and issued warning vocalizations that immediately alerted the other clan members. The photographer continued his approach, believing that the hyena's focus on feeding would prevent aggressive behavior if he avoided sudden movements. He positioned himself behind a small acacia tree and began photographing the feeding behavior, unaware that his presence had triggered defensive responses throughout the clan. The attack began when David stepped into the open to change his shooting angle, making himself fully visible to the agitated clan members who had been tracking his movements. The dominant female led the charge, followed by 6 other adults who abandoned their feeding to neutralize what they perceived as a threat to their food source. David attempted to retreat toward his vehicle, but was quickly surrounded by the coordinated attack of multiple hyenas working together. The clan's assault was swift and overwhelming, with multiple hyenas attacking simultaneously from different angles to prevent escape. The dominant female's powerful jaws clamped onto David's torso, while other clan members attacked his limbs, their combined bite force causing massive trauma that made survival impossible. David's camera equipment was scattered across the savannah as the hyena's coordinated attack demonstrated the lethal efficiency of coordinated clan behavior. The guide's attempts to drive off the attacking hyenas with vehicle noise and shouting proved ineffective against the clan's feeding frenzy, and David's injuries from multiple powerful bites caused rapid blood loss and organ damage. The attack unfolded in under a minute before the hyenas returned to their carcass, leaving David's body where park rangers would recover it 3 hours later. The investigation revealed that David had violated fundamental wildlife photography safety protocols by leaving his vehicle and approaching a feeding clan during their most dangerous behavioral state. The hyenas had exhibited normal defensive behavior when protecting a valuable food source, and no action was taken against the animals. David's death prompted enhanced safety briefings for all photographers working in Kenyan national parks and stricter enforcement of distance regulations. It was May 19th, 2015, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the golden grasslands of Chobe National Park. The air hung thick and still as Kabelo Maruti steered his open-sided Land Cruiser toward a cluster of acacia trees where a small herd of Cape buffalo grazed. Cabello was a 34-year-old safari guide from Kasan, a border town where tourism jobs were coveted and competition fierce. He'd worked for a private company for 3 years, long enough to develop a reputation among the local guiding community as someone who pushed boundaries. His approach to wildlife viewing prioritized client satisfaction over protocol, getting closer than regulations allowed, staying longer than was safe, and frequently dismissing the cautious advice of more experienced guides. That afternoon's group consisted of 6 American tourists on a 4-day photography package. They'd already seen elephants, giraffes, and a distant pride of lions, but several had expressed disappointment at not getting close enough for dramatic shots. Cabello had promised them something special before the day ended, and when he spotted the buffalo herd less than 100 feet from the vehicle track, he saw his opportunity to deliver. Cape buffalo are among Africa's deadliest animals, killing more hunters and guides than any other large mammal. Bulls can weigh 2,000 pounds, stand over 5 feet tall, and have curved horns spanning over 3 feet, fused at the base into a solid shield with sharp points. Unpredictable and quick to retaliate, they have poor eyesight but excellent hearing and can charge up to 30 miles per hour with surprising agility. As Cabello maneuvered the Land Cruiser to within 60 feet of the herd, the tourists began photographing eagerly. Several buffalo raised their heads, staring directly at the vehicle. One particularly large bull separated slightly from the group, positioning himself between the herd and the vehicle. His head lowered incrementally, and his tail began flicking in short, agitated movements. These were textbook warning signs that experienced guides recognized as preludes to charging behavior. But Cabello continued narrating about buffalo's social structure as if nothing was amiss. After approximately 10 minutes of viewing, Cabello announced he needed to relieve himself. He turned off the engine, a clear violation of basic safari protocol, and stepped down from the driver's side, walking around to the rear of the vehicle. The tourists continued filming through the open sides of the Land Cruiser, their cameras fixed on the herd, inadvertently documenting what would happen next. The bull buffalo remained stationary, approximately 50 feet away, head still lowered and tail flicking with increasing frequency. Cabello moved to a spot just behind the rear tire, partially visible to the tourists and fully exposed to the herd. The attack began without additional warning. The bull buffalo exploded into motion, closing the distance in about 3 seconds. Cabello turned at the sound of hoofbeats, his body language shifting from casual to panicked in the final instant before impact. The buffalo's right horn caught him just below the rib cage, the force of the 2,000-pound animal at full charge driving the horn through his abdomen and out near his lower back. His feet left the ground as the animal's forward momentum carried him upward, a grotesque display of raw power. The buffalo shook its head violently, flinging Cabello sideways where he landed heavily on the hard-packed earth, roughly 8 feet away. He tried to rise, one hand clutching at the massive wound in his abdomen, but the buffalo was already circling back. Tourists watched in horror as the animal's front hooves came down on Cabello's chest and shoulder with sickening force. The buffalo stomped repeatedly, each blow crushing bone and driving Cabello's body deeper into the dust. The tourists' screams filled the audio track, their voices raw with horror as they pounded frantically on the metal window frames. Several shouted for someone to start the vehicle, but none knew how to start or drive the Land Cruiser. The sustained attack lasted roughly 40 seconds before the buffalo finally stepped back, regarding Cabello's motionless form briefly before trotting back to rejoin the herd, which had barely moved throughout the incident. One of the tourists, a man from Colorado with emergency medical training, managed to radio another guide on the backup communication device Cabello had left in the front seat. Park medics arrived 14 minutes later in a rapid response vehicle, but Cabello had already died from massive internal hemorrhaging. The preliminary field examination noted multiple fractured ribs, a punctured liver, collapsed lungs, and severe crush injuries to the chest cavity. The locally operating safari company settled privately with Cabello's family, providing an undisclosed sum to his wife and 2 young daughters. The company implemented mandatory engine-on policies and doubled the minimum distance requirements for buffalo viewing. The footage, taken as evidence by park authorities, was later leaked online before being repeatedly removed. It was March 7, 2015, outside Lockhart, Texas, at a small private animal sanctuary, operating on a limited state permit. The facility had been running for 11 years on a series of renewals and had received 2 compliance notices in the 3 years prior to the incident. The tiger enclosure was a chain-link structure measuring roughly 40 by 60 feet, with a single entry gate secured by a sliding bolt latch. It contained an elevated wooden platform, a water trough, and a feeding station along the far wall. Tanner Gribbe was 31 years old and based in San Antonio, and had been producing exotic animal content for just over 2 years. He visited private sanctuaries, roadside zoos, and exotic animal auctions across Texas and neighboring states, building his content around proximity, getting closer to animals than most visitors were permitted, and framing it as a natural connection rather than a safety violation. He had no formal animal handling training and held no certifications of any kind. He had visited the Lockhart facility twice before, and on his second visit, posted a video from the tiger enclosure fence line that received more engagement than anything else on his channel. In the comments, he told a viewer he intended to go inside on his next visit. The resident Bengal tiger was a 9-year-old male weighing approximately 410 pounds, raised at the facility since 14 months old, and never trained for human contact beyond the feeding routine. The facility owner had made it explicitly clear on Tanner's second visit that enclosure entry was not permitted under any circumstances. Tanner posted a video 3 days before the incident, stating he believed the tiger would recognize him. On the day of the incident, a facility volunteer saw him moving toward the gate and walked to find the owner when he didn't respond to her. The Bengal tiger is one of the largest land predators in the world, with adult males commonly weighing between 380 and 480 pounds and measuring up to 10 feet from nose to tail. A tiger's forelimb strike carries enough force to fracture the skull of a large bovine in a single blow. A captive tiger that tolerates a familiar human at a fence line behaves fundamentally differently when that person enters the enclosure. The enclosed space triggers a territorial response that overrides any prior conditioning, and the transition from stillness to contact typically occurs in under 2 seconds. Tanner unlatched the gate at 2:17 p.m. and stepped inside, pulling it closed behind him. The tiger was resting on the elevated platform at the far end of the enclosure, approximately 35 feet away. Tanner moved several steps forward and lowered himself into a crouch with both arms extended outward, a posture he had described in previous videos as non-threatening. The tiger rose from the platform within 4 seconds. It did not vocalize. It came off the platform and covered the 35-foot distance in under 2 seconds. Tanner did not move toward the gate. The tiger's right forepaw made contact with Tanner's upper chest and left shoulder in a downward strike. The force drove him straight down onto the compacted dirt floor. The impact was audible from outside the fence line. Tanner did not attempt to rise. The tiger stood over him for approximately 20 seconds before stepping away and moving toward the water trough at the side of the enclosure. This behavior, while not universal, has been observed in captive big cat incidents, where the initial strike fully incapacitates the subject and the animal registers no continued movement or resistance. A tiger that does not perceive ongoing threat or prey behavior after a strike will sometimes disengage without resuming contact. The facility volunteer heard the impact from outside and did not enter the enclosure area. The owner arrived approximately 5 minutes later, used a compressed air horn and a feed bucket to draw the tiger toward the interior divider gate, secured it, and entered the outer section. Tanner was unresponsive. His breathing was shallow and his audibly compromised. The left side of his chest had sustained visible deformation, consistent with severe blunt force trauma. Paramedics arrived at 2:46 p.m. Tanner was intubated at the scene and transported to a regional medical center. He was in cardiac arrest on arrival and could not be resuscitated. He was pronounced dead at 3:31 p.m. The official cause of death was hemorrhagic shock, secondary to blunt force thoracic trauma. 4 ribs on the left side had fractured on impact, 2 of which displaced inward and lacerated the left lung, leading to internal bleeding that could not be controlled in the field. The facility was cited for enclosure access control failures and inadequate visitor supervision following an inspection several days later. It suspended public visits within 3 weeks and did not reopen. The tiger was relocated to a larger state-permitted facility in East Texas. No criminal charges were filed against the owner. Tanner's accounts were made private by a family member and later permanently removed. It was February 3, 2013, and the treacherous mangrove swamps of Bangladesh's Sundarbans stretched endlessly under the oppressive humidity of the Bay of Bengal as Nazir Hossain navigated his small boat through the maze of tidal channels that separated this remote wilderness from civilization. The 36-year-old fisherman had joined a small group of illegal tiger hunters after climate change and overfishing had made his traditional livelihood impossible, leaving him desperate to support his large family. Nazir and 2 other local men had turned to poaching after being recruited by middlemen who promised substantial payments for tiger parts on the black market. None of the 3 had experienced hunting dangerous game, but the desperate economic situation in their coastal village had driven them to risk everything in the world's largest mangrove forest, home to one of the most dangerous populations of Bengal tigers on Earth. Armed with old rifles and crude traps made from materials scavenged from their fishing equipment, the group represented the desperation that drove local people to hunt endangered species for survival. The Sundarbans tigers were known for their adaptability to the unique mangrove environment, but they generally avoided human contact whenever possible. These tigers typically attacked humans only under unusual circumstances, such as injury, old age, territorial defense, or when natural prey became scarce. The dense mangrove ecosystem and frequent human intrusions created situations where such encounters were more likely than in other tiger habitats. Bengal tigers are among the world's most powerful predators, with adult males in the Sundarbans weighing between 320 and 360 pounds and possessing incredible strength, speed, and hunting ability. The tigers of this region have developed unique adaptations for hunting in the mangrove environment, including the ability to swim long distances and an unusual tolerance for salt water that allows them to move freely throughout the tidal ecosystem. Nazir and his companions had set up their crude trap system using a goat as bait, positioning themselves in makeshift blinds constructed from mangrove branches and fishing nets. Their plan was simple: wait for a tiger to approach the bait, then kill it with coordinated gunfire before it could escape into the dense swamp. But their inexperience with both tigers and firearms would prove fatal in an environment where mistakes meant death. When a massive male tiger approached the bait site, the group's nerves overcame their judgment. Nazir fired first, but his shot struck the tiger in the hindquarters rather than a vital area. The wounded 350-pound predator roared in pain and fury before disappearing into the mangrove thicket, while the panicked poachers scattered in different directions during their chaotic escape attempt. Nazir became separated from his companions in the maze of identical-looking channels, his unfamiliarity with this particular section of the Sundarbans working against him as he tried to navigate back to their boat. The wounded tiger, rather than pursuing the fleeing hunters, had taken refuge near the bait site, where his injury and pain made him increasingly defensive and aggressive. 2 days later, Nazir's desperation to retrieve their expensive equipment and the valuable goat bait led him to return to the trap site alone. His family's mounting debts and the prospect of losing their home drove him to take this dangerous risk despite his companions' warnings. His companions had refused to go back, but Nazir's family's dire financial situation drove him to risk the dangerous return journey through the mangrove channels. The wounded tiger had remained in the area, his his injury preventing him from hunting effectively and making him increasingly territorial around the location where he had been attacked. When Nazir approached the bait site, the big cat's defensive territorial response near the site of injury identified the returning human as the source of his pain and injury. The tiger's attack came as a defensive ambush when Nazir moved through the narrow channel near the trap site. The 350-pound predator launched himself from the concealment of the mangrove roots, his massive body striking Nazir with the full force of a wounded animal defending his territory. The tiger's jaws clamped down on Nazir's neck and head with devastating, crushing power, his natural killing technique designed to end threats quickly and efficiently. The big cat's assault lasted only seconds, his defensive instincts neutralizing the perceived threat before he retreated deeper into the mangrove thicket. Forest guards found Nazir's remains 3 days later during a routine patrol, his body bearing the devastating injuries inflicted by the wounded tiger's defensive attack. The investigation revealed the crude trapping equipment and illegal rifle that had led to his death, highlighting the desperation that drove local people to risk their lives hunting endangered tigers. Nazir's death underscored the complex relationship between poverty, conservation, and human-wildlife conflict in one of the world's most dangerous ecosystems. His family's grief was compounded by the knowledge that his illegal activities had contributed to the decline of an already endangered species, while his surviving companions abandoned poaching after witnessing the deadly consequences of their desperate venture. It was November 23, 2021, and the makeshift refugee camp outside Mogadishu operated under constant threat from both human conflict and the dangerous wildlife that had been displaced by years of warfare. Sarah Mitchell, a 29-year-old medical coordinator from Australia, had been managing healthcare services at the camp for 6 months as part of an international humanitarian mission. The facility housed over 3,000 displaced civilians in conditions that challenged even experienced aid workers, with limited security and basic infrastructure that provided minimal protection from the harsh environment. Sarah had volunteered for the Somalia assignment after completing similar missions in Afghanistan and South Sudan, where her medical expertise and leadership skills had earned recognition from international relief organizations. Her dedication to helping vulnerable populations had driven her to accept increasingly dangerous assignments, believing that her experience in conflict zones had prepared her for any challenges she might face. The Mogadishu camp represented one of the most dangerous humanitarian postings in Africa, with regular threats from armed groups and environmental hazards. The camp's location on the outskirts of the war-torn city had been chosen for security reasons, but the remote site also placed residents and staff in close proximity to wildlife that had been driven from their natural habitats by years of conflict. Spotted hyenas had become increasingly bold around human settlements as traditional food sources disappeared, leading to several incidents where scavengers had entered the camp during nighttime hours. The medical emergency that would cost Sarah her life began when a pregnant woman went into complicated labor during the early morning hours, requiring immediate intervention that could not wait for daylight or additional security personnel. What Sarah didn't know was that a pair of spotted hyenas had been scavenging in the camp's waste disposal area, drawn by the scent of medical waste and food scraps that attracted them to human settlements. The predators had become habituated to human presence over several weeks of successful foraging, losing their natural fear of people and growing increasingly bold in their approach to occupied areas. Spotted hyenas in conflict zones often exhibit altered behavior patterns due to the abundance of carrion and the disruption of normal territorial boundaries. These adaptable predators quickly learn to associate human settlements with food sources, becoming increasingly aggressive as they compete for resources in areas where traditional prey has been displaced. The combination of habituation and food scarcity creates particularly dangerous conditions for humans who encounter these opportunistic scavengers. Sarah's journey to the medical emergency began normally, with her following established pathways through the camp while carrying her medical kit and a small flashlight. The pregnant woman's condition required immediate attention, and Sarah's focus on the medical crisis prevented her from paying adequate attention to the environmental dangers that surrounded the camp. She had made similar trips dozens of times without incident, creating a false sense of security about the risks involved in nighttime movement. The attack occurred when Sarah passed near the waste disposal area where the two hyenas had been foraging, her sudden appearance startling the predators who perceived her as a threat to their feeding territory. The larger male hyena charged from the shadows, his powerful jaws clamping onto Sarah's leg and bringing her to the ground before she could react or call for help. Her medical kit scattered across the ground as she fell, the contents mixing with the dirt and debris of the camp's pathways. Sarah's attempts to fight off the attacking hyena only intensified the predator's aggressive behavior, as her struggles reinforced his perception that she represented a threat that required elimination. The second hyena joined the attack, and their combined assault created injuries that caused massive blood loss and trauma to vital organs. Sarah's screams echoed across the camp, but the distance from occupied areas and the ambient noise of the refugee settlement delayed the response of security personnel. The attack lasted approximately 90 seconds before camp security arrived, with flashlights and noisemakers, driving the hyenas away from Sarah's severely injured body. Emergency medical treatment was attempted using the camp's limited resources, but Sarah's injuries from the powerful bites had caused damage that made survival impossible, even with immediate surgical intervention. She died from blood loss and organ trauma while her colleagues worked desperately to save her life. The investigation revealed that the hyenas had been attracted to the camp by inadequate waste management practices and the abundance of food sources created by the large refugee population. Sarah's death prompted immediate reviews of security protocols at humanitarian facilities throughout Somalia, with enhanced requirements for waste disposal and wildlife management. The incident highlighted the complex dangers faced by aid workers in conflict zones where environmental and security threats intersect. Sarah's family established a foundation supporting medical training for humanitarian workers in dangerous environments, ensuring that her dedication to helping others would continue benefiting vulnerable populations. The refugee camp implemented comprehensive wildlife deterrent systems and relocated waste disposal areas away from residential sections. It was November 2nd, 2017, and the headlights of the tour bus cut through the absolute darkness of Tsavo East National Park. The engine had fallen silent 20 minutes earlier, and what had begun as a minor inconvenience was rapidly transforming into something far more sinister. Ramesh Patel, a 58-year-old retired hardware wholesaler from Leicester, had been traveling through East Africa for 2 weeks, his first trip abroad since his wife Anjali's death from cancer 8 months earlier. His adult children had encouraged the journey, hoping it might help him process his grief. The safari tour had been a last-minute addition to his itinerary, booked through a budget operator that offered rates significantly lower than established companies. During the mandatory safety briefing that morning, the guide had emphasized repeatedly that passengers must never leave the vehicle under any circumstances. The tour bus, a converted truck with open sides and bench seating for 12 passengers, had been making the return journey to the main lodge when the engine began sputtering around 7:15 p.m. Kimani, the driver, kept his torch trained on the engine and positioned himself so the bus remained between him and the grass line. His attempts to restart the engine produced only clicking sounds. Several passengers noticed movement in the darkness beyond. Within minutes, at least 5 lions had materialized from the bush, their forms becoming visible as they crossed through the beam of the headlights. The Australian couple began filming on their phones. Kimani climbed back into the driver's seat and radioed the main office for assistance, reporting their GPS coordinates. The office confirmed a rescue vehicle would be dispatched, estimating roughly 30 minutes for arrival. African lions are the only truly social big cats, living in prides of up to 30 individuals that cooperate in hunting and territory defense. Adult male lions in the wild typically weigh between about 330 and 420 pounds. Even so, a fully grown male can easily overpower a lone human. Their night vision, aided by a reflective layer behind the retina, makes them far more effective in low light than a human. Most critically, male lions are territorial and will attack perceived threats to assert dominance, particularly after dark when their confidence peaks. The lions continued their slow approach, occasionally pausing to watch the bus. Their movements were unhurried but deliberate, closing the distance by increments. Kimani instructed all passengers to remain seated and silent, explaining that lions typically would not attack a vehicle unless provoked. Another passenger later reported that Ramesh seemed almost manic, insisting repeatedly that the animals could sense fear and that showing confidence was the solution. Moments later, Ramesh stood and moved toward the open side of the bus. Kimani grabbed his arm, pleading with him to sit down. Ramesh pulled free, stating that he would demonstrate how to properly handle wildlife. Multiple passengers were filming as Ramesh positioned himself on the step at the side exit, one foot on the ground. He raised his arms above his head and shouted toward the closest lion, a male approximately 40 feet away. The lion closed the gap in seconds. The attack was captured on 4 separate phones from different angles. The videos were grainy and overexposed where the headlights hit. They showed the sequence well enough to corroborate witness statements. The male exploded forward with shocking acceleration, his massive body low to the ground as he closed the gap. Ramesh had no time to react. The impact knocked him completely off the bus step, his body slamming into the hard-packed earth with audible force. The lion's jaws clamped around Ramesh's throat before he could even attempt to rise, the predator's frame pinning him flat. The male began shaking his head violently side to side. Ramesh's arms, which had initially flailed against the lion's shoulders, went slack within 15 seconds. Blood spread rapidly across the pale dirt, appearing black in the artificial light. The lion maintained his grip for nearly a minute, applying crushing pressure that collapsed Ramesh's trachea and fractured cervical vertebrae. When the body had gone completely limp, the male released his hold momentarily before clamping down again on Ramesh's shoulder. He began dragging the body backward, away from the bus and out of the headlight beams. 2 female lions materialized from the darkness to join the male, their interest in the kill immediate. Within seconds, all 3 had dragged Ramesh approximately 60 feet from the bus, where they began feeding. Kimani had radioed park control the moment Ramesh stepped down. The rescue vehicle, already en route, diverted directly to their coordinates. Rangers arrived 25 minutes after the initial attack, equipped with spotlights, loudspeakers, and air horns. They fired rifle shots into the air to drive the lions away from what remained of Ramesh's body. The medical examiner's report, filed 2 days later, listed cause of death as primary cause: catastrophic cervical trauma with rapid hemorrhage. The report noted that Ramesh had suffered a crushed windpipe, fractured neck at the C3 and C4 vertebrae, and massive tissue damage to the throat and upper chest. Ramesh's body was repatriated to Leicester. Kenyan wildlife authorities seized the phone footage from all passengers as evidence and levied substantial fines against the company for negligence. The operator's license was suspended pending safety improvements. It was October 9th, 2015, and the late morning sun beat down on the concrete walkways of a zoo in Karnataka, India. Within hours, the scheduled tiger feeding would become a spectacle of a very different kind. Devansh Malhotra was a 46-year-old real estate developer from Bangalore, known throughout the city's business circles for his aggressive negotiation tactics and his belief that money could open any door. His colleagues described him as someone who treated rules as suggestions meant for others, not for men of his standing. He had built his fortune through a combination of shrewd investments and an uncanny ability to leverage connections, often reminding subordinates that he knew people in positions of power who could make problems or people disappear. That morning, Devansh arrived at the zoo with his extended family for his nephew's birthday. Dressed in designer clothing, he had already complained about the facilities. When he heard about the 11:30 a.m. tiger feeding, he decided it would be the highlight, but watching from behind barriers wasn't enough. He wanted to feed the tiger himself, likely to impress his family. Bengal tigers represent one of nature's most efficient killing machines, with adult males weighing between 400 and 570 pounds of pure muscle and predatory instinct. These apex predators can accelerate to speeds of 35 miles per hour in short bursts and possess a bite force powerful enough to crush bone, and sever limbs in a single snap. A junior zookeeper assigned to the feeding demonstration had already refused Devonshire's initial request 3 times, explaining that only trained personnel could approach the feeding slot. Other staff members reinforced this message, pointing to the warning signs and explaining that the protocol existed to protect visitors. Devonshire responded with rising anger, berating the zookeeper and threatening his job, loudly claiming municipal connections during phone calls. When refused again, he accused the young keeper of discrimination. After 15 minutes of pressure, the keeper extended the staff feeding portion on a wooden stick, but Devonshire pushed his hand past the sill instead. Inside, the 9-year-old male tiger, Sultan, paced with visible agitation, ears slightly flattened and tail twitching. As Devonshire crouched and pushed the chicken toward the feeding slot, Sultan's body tensed. The attack happened with shocking speed. Sultan exploded forward, closing the 6 feet to the feeding opening in a heartbeat. His massive jaws clamped down on Devonshire's extended forearm. Multiple witnesses, including Devonshire's family members standing just 20 feet away, watched in frozen horror as the tiger's teeth penetrated completely through flesh and bone, the animal's powerful neck muscles jerking backward. Devonshire's scream cut through the air as Sultan began trying to drag him forward and pull his arm into the feeding slot. The concrete around the feeding slot became slick with blood as Sultan shook his head violently from side to side, the way tigers naturally tear chunks from larger prey. Devonshire's shoulder slammed against the iron grating repeatedly, his free hand clawing desperately at the concrete as he was pulled with terrifying force. The tiger's front claws extended through the grating, raking across Devonshire's chest and face, opening deep parallel gashes. Each shake of Sultan's head sent blood spraying in wide arcs across the viewing platform. Devonshire's screams had devolved into wet, gurgling sounds as blood filled his throat. His body went into shock within 90 seconds of the initial bite, though Sultan continued pulling and tearing for another minute. The zookeepers immediately initiated emergency protocols, rushing to the rear access door with fire extinguishers and air horns. They discharged the extinguishers through the bars while creating as much noise as possible, causing Sultan to momentarily release his grip. In that brief window, they threw several pounds of fresh meat into the far corner of the enclosure. Sultan, his muzzle dark with blood, hesitated for 3 seconds before moving toward the distraction. The keepers quickly secured him in the rear holding pen while cordoning off the viewing platform. Emergency services, called by zoo security within 30 seconds, found Devonshire face down at the base of the enclosure wall in a spreading pool of blood. His right arm was completely severed just below the shoulder, lying several feet away, and deep lacerations covered his chest, neck, and face. He had no pulse and was not breathing. The medical examiner listed the cause of death as catastrophic blood loss from traumatic amputation and multiple penetrating injuries. He likely lost consciousness within 2 minutes from hypovolemic shock, with death occurring within 4 minutes. Damage to the brachial, subclavian, and carotid arteries caused blood loss estimated at over 40% of total volume. The zoo immediately suspended all feeding demonstrations and closed the big cat section for review. An investigation revealed that the junior zookeeper had been pressured into allowing the incident, and while no disciplinary action was taken, he resigned 2 weeks later, citing trauma. It was July 8th, 2015, and the afternoon heat shimmered across the walkways of a safari park, a mid-sized wildlife facility in Southern California, where Patricia Holbrook was about to discover that some complaints end in blood. Patricia Holbrook, 52, was a successful real estate agent who had built her career on one simple principle. She always got what she wanted. She didn't tolerate incompetence and measured her worth by how quickly people responded to her demands. What Patricia didn't understand was that nature operates by different rules, ones that don't care about customer satisfaction or social status. Patricia had purchased premium VIP tour tickets for herself and her 16-year-old daughter, Emma. The tour was marketed as an intimate experience limited to 12 guests, offering close-up observation opportunities unavailable to general admission visitors. Patricia saw this as money well spent, not for education, but for bragging rights and social media content. The group arrived at the African lion habitat around 2:30 p.m., where tour guide Michael Torres began explaining lion social structure and conservation efforts. The facility housed 6 lions, including Akili, a 450-pound male, and 5 females in a large enclosure separated from visitors. Park protocols were explicit. Guests must remain on designated viewing platforms. Photography was permitted without flash, and no attempts to touch or feed the animals were allowed under any circumstances. Patricia immediately interrupted Michael's presentation, loudly complaining that the viewing angle didn't offer good photo opportunities for her Instagram account. She demanded that Michael reposition the entire group or allow her closer access to the barrier. When Michael politely declined, citing safety regulations, Patricia's demeanor shifted to outright hostility. The situation escalated when Patricia stepped off the designated viewing platform, while Michael was answering another visitor's question. She walked past the outer standoff rail and positioned herself directly against the inner barrier, a reinforced panel with a narrow keeper access gap at one end, designed for staff to pass feeding equipment through. Michael noticed immediately and called out for her to return, explaining that the area beyond the standoff rail was strictly off-limits. Patricia ignored him. She told herself the gap was small, that the lion was resting 20 feet away, and that she just needed one good shot. She extended her iPhone through the keeper access gap, angling for a close-up. The shot wasn't good enough. She leaned further in, her shoulder pressing against the gap, her phone hand reaching deeper into the restricted space. When her daughter called from the platform for her to come back, Patricia didn't even turn around. What Patricia didn't appreciate, what most people standing outside a lion enclosure never fully internalize, is that African lions are not simply large cats. They are apex ambush predators, capable of covering 30 feet in under a second, with forepaws that can generate enough force to collapse a zebra's spine on contact. Michael radioed for security and began walking toward Patricia, telling her this was her final warning. He never finished the sentence. Akili crossed the 20 feet in seconds. The lion's paw drove through the keeper access gap with full force, but Patricia had leaned so far that it wasn't her arm that took the blow. The claws connected with her neck and upper shoulder, the hooked grip pulling her violently sideways into the barrier. Patricia made a sound that wasn't quite a scream, something shorter, cut off, before her legs gave out beneath her. Michael ran forward shouting and waving his arms while other staff arrived with air horns. The first radio call overlapped with another channel, costing a few seconds that felt much longer before the right team was dispatched. They discharged the horns repeatedly. Akili backed away. Patricia was on the ground, unresponsive. The wound at her neck was bleeding heavily, the kind of blood loss that doesn't wait. Staff applied emergency pressure dressings immediately, but the damage was severe. A claw had torn through the tissue along the side of her neck, compromising major vasculature. By the time paramedics arrived, she had lost consciousness, her breathing shallow and irregular, her pulse weak and fading. She was transported to the nearest trauma center, but the blood loss had been too rapid and too significant. Patricia Holbrook was pronounced dead shortly after arrival. She was 52 years old. It was July 18th, 2017, when the Vancy family arrived at a private savanna reserve in East Africa, cameras ready and expectations high. Grover Vancy, a 41-year-old travel vlogger known for pushing boundaries to capture risky wildlife footage, had planned the trip for months. His wife Marla, 39, was a lifestyle influencer documenting every moment online. Their 3 children, Caspian, 14, Jetta, 11, and Bodhi, 8, were used to their parents' content-driven lifestyle. The reserve stretched endlessly around them, golden grass swaying beneath a harsh sun, acacia trees dotting the horizon. Grover chose this location for closer vehicle access to wildlife than most parks, though rangers warned that exiting vehicles near predators and flying drones were forbidden. That morning, their guide radioed that another safari vehicle ahead was stuck and drove forward to assist just beyond the rise. After confirming by radio that no predators had been reported nearby, he instructed the Vancies to remain inside with doors closed and said he would return shortly. Moments after the guide's vehicle slipped out of sight, Grover dismissed the rules as overly cautious. He stepped out beside the parked vehicle, laughing into the camera that lions usually ignored. Vehicles and tourists exaggerated the danger. Marla hesitated but followed. Caspian quietly launched the banned drone, sending it buzzing overhead. Jetta hovered near the open door, eager to spot animals, while Bodhi mimicked his siblings, trying to seem brave. African lions are apex predators, and among the continent's most efficient hunters. Females do most of the hunting, working together to bring down prey larger than themselves. Lions often rest in the heat, but remain alert to opportunity. When disturbed, or when movement appears nearby, instinct can override their lethargy with explosive speed. The fatal mistake came when the Vancy family edged farther from their vehicle. After spotting shapes in the tall grass, Grover urged them around the front for a better shot, where the high grass partly blocked their view. They moved several steps out, focused on framing wildlife behind them. Above, the drone dipped lower, its whine slicing through the stillness and agitating the concealed pride. One lioness lifted her head. Another rose and moved low through the grass, nearly invisible. The family stayed focused on their cameras. Jetta had wandered furthest, crouching to adjust her angle when the first lioness burst from cover and crossed the short distance in seconds. She slammed into the 11-year-old, knocking her flat. Dust exploded as the lioness grappled, biting into Jetta's shoulder and face before shifting to the throat. Grover shouted and rushed forward, but the sudden movement triggered more predatory focus. As Jetta's attack unfolded, a second lioness charged at Grover, striking his side and sending him stumbling. He tried to retreat, but she seized his shoulder and dragged him down. He fought briefly before she repositioned and locked onto his neck, crushing tissue as he weakened within seconds. Marla screamed and grabbed Bodhi, pulling him toward the vehicle in blind terror. For a moment, they seemed close enough to reach it. The commotion drew a large male lion resting only meters deeper in the grass. He rose, fixed on the frantic movement, and lunged as Marla stumbled. His weight slammed into them, knocking both down. The male bit Marla first as she tried to shield Bodhi. When the child suddenly crawled free and cried out, the movement triggered the lion to strike again, pinning Bodhi and biting into his torso. Caspian, frozen at first, finally bolted for the vehicle, adrenaline carrying him several strides before he tripped on uneven ground. He scrambled up, hands slipping in the dust. But another lioness, already circling behind the grass line, rushed in. She grabbed, briefly lost hold, then seized him higher at the neck. A violent shake followed, leaving him motionless in the dust. The chaos lasted less than a minute. First the strike on Jetta, then Grover's failed charge, followed by desperate attempts to flee. After several tense seconds scanning the area, the lions began dragging the bodies into taller grass, pausing to reposition their grips as they pulled them away from the abandoned vehicle and scattered equipment. Death came through airway crushing, catastrophic trauma, and blood loss. Overhead, the drone continued circling until its battery died. Reserve staff initiated a search after repeated unanswered radio calls, and the guide's delayed return raised concern. They discovered the scene later that day, once the unattended vehicle was located. The investigation confirmed the family had violated safety protocols by leaving their vehicle without authorization and flying a prohibited drone near a resting pride. Footage recovered showed how quickly the situation escalated once the lions were disturbed. The reserve later tightened supervision and penalties for leaving vehicles in predator zones. It was March 14th, 2013, and the Land Cruiser lurched through the shallow crossing of the Okavango Delta's Tamalakayan River. Elena Ruiz Calderon leaned halfway out the rear passenger window, her camera trained on the riverbank where 3 massive crocodiles basked in the midday heat. Elena was a 29-year-old Spanish-language teacher from Spain who had saved for 2 years to afford this safari. Her colleagues described her as enthusiastic to the point of recklessness, the type who would climb fences at the zoo for better photographs. She had arrived in Botswana 5 days earlier, her first time in Africa, with 3 memory cards and a waterproof camera rated for extreme conditions. She had specifically requested a safari that included river crossings, fascinated by the idea of driving through crocodile habitat. Elena's guide, a Botswanan man named Thabo Modise, had been leading safaris for 11 years without incident. He had explained during the morning briefing that all windows must remain closed during water crossings, a rule that existed for precisely the scenario about to unfold. Adult Nile crocodiles commonly reach double-digit lengths and can be massive. Exceptionally large males may exceed 13 to 16 feet and can weigh well over 1,000 pounds. Their hunting strategy relies on explosive ambush attacks from below or beside the water's surface, often targeting prey at the waterline. As the land cruiser entered the crossing, Thabo noticed Elena opening her window. He told her twice to close it immediately. She waved him off without looking away from her viewfinder, calling back that she was fine and knew what she was doing. 2 other tourists in the vehicle, a Dutch couple named Frans and Margot de Vries, later reported feeling uneasy about Elena's behavior, but said nothing. The crocodiles on the bank appeared motionless, their eyes tracking the vehicle's progress through the water. Elena extended her upper body further out the window, camera clutched in both hands, as she filmed the reptiles just a few feet away. Thabo judged that stopping mid-channel risked bogging the vehicle, so he urged her again while keeping the land cruiser moving toward the far bank. The recovered footage shows clear footage of the basking crocodiles, then pans across the water's surface. Elena's breathing is audible on the recording, excited and rapid. Thabo's voice can be heard again, more urgent now, telling her to get inside. The vehicle was approximately 3/4 of the way across when the water beside the rear passenger door suddenly churned. The attack came from a direction Elena wasn't filming. A crocodile, submerged and invisible in the murky water, had detected the vibrations of the vehicle and the splashing near the open window. Witnesses saw the moment Elena jerks downward as something yanks her arm. She screams as she tries to pull back. The crocodile had latched onto her right forearm just below the elbow, its serrated teeth penetrating through skin, muscle, and tendons. Eyewitness accounts from people in the vehicle describe seeing Elena's body pulled violently against the window frame, her left hand grasping desperately at the door. The crocodile, estimated at 14 feet long based on later examination of the footage, used its body weight and the mechanical advantage of the water to drag her downward and outward. Elena's entire upper body was wrenched through the window opening. Leaning well out of the window with her torso angled toward the bank made it possible for the croc to wrench her upper body through the opening. One of the passengers grabbed at Elena's legs, but the crocodile's grip was absolute. The crushing pressure of its jaws had already fractured both bones in Elena's forearm. She managed one more scream before her head disappeared below the water's surface. Elena's struggle became visible through the car window as she plunged beneath the murky water, dark swirls and froth marking each violent thrash. The crocodile's pale underbelly surfaced briefly as it executed a death roll, spinning her in the current with bone-crushing force. For a fleeting moment, Elena broke the surface again before the predator dragged her under, deeper this time, leaving only the rippling water behind. Thabo accelerated hard, the land cruiser surging up the far bank within seconds of the attack. Tourists were screaming incoherently, while someone shouted that they needed to go back. Thabo radioed for emergency assistance. The nearest ranger station was 18 miles away on rough roads. A response team arrived 31 minutes after the attack. Search efforts began immediately, but were hampered by poor visibility and the presence of multiple large crocodiles. Elena's camera was recovered 200 yards downstream the following morning, snagged on submerged vegetation. Investigators imaged the memory card and preserved the original files and timestamps as part of the chain of custody. The memory card remained functional, providing the only detailed record of the attack. No human remains were found during the 2-day search. The coroner's report, filed without a body, listed probable cause as drowning with massive traumatic injuries, and estimated that survival after submersion was likely brief. The Safari Lodge implemented mandatory window locks on all vehicles and revised its liability waivers to include specific language about crocodile encounters. The footage was shared with the family, and public release was withheld. It was July 18, 2016, and the late afternoon heat was pressing down hard on a private game reserve near Hoedspruit in South Africa's Limpopo province. The bush was dry and golden, that kind of stillness where even the wind seems to hold its breath. Acacia trees dotted the landscape, their twisted branches throwing thin shadows over cracked earth. Somewhere ahead, partially hidden in tall grass, a lion was resting. Lesta Prim was a 24-year-old German woman working toward her full field guide certification, gaining practical hours at the reserve by leading small tourist groups under a senior ranger. People who worked with her described her as enthusiastic and eager to impress, but that eagerness had a downside. She'd been noted more than once for positioning vehicles too close and letting guests linger near predators longer than protocol allowed. Most of her experience had been with lions habituated to safari vehicle, animals that tolerate engines and metal frames without reacting. She'd told guests the lions were used to people, but being used to vehicles is not the same thing as being safe around humans on foot. That's a critical difference, and it's one she never fully internalized. The lion out there that day had been recently relocated, still adjusting to new territory, unfamiliar with human patterns and far less predictable than the prides she'd trained around. That afternoon, Lesta was conducting a wildlife stop with a small group of tourists. The senior ranger had briefly stepped away to reposition the vehicle, and what she did next broke every protocol she'd ever been taught. African lions are apex predators. Females average between 265 and 395 pounds. Males exceed 420. They can explode into a sprint and close distance before you even register what's happening. Their killing method is suffocation. Jaws clamp around the throat, collapsing the windpipe or compressing the carotid arteries until you lose consciousness. Claws exceed 3 inches. Bite force is enough to crush and tear without effort. And here's what people don't understand. A lion doesn't see you the same way when you're outside the vehicle. Inside, you're part of something large and unthreatening. Outside, you're something else entirely. Lesta stepped out and walked toward the lion on foot. She moved ahead of the group, putting distance between herself and everyone else. The lion was lying partially concealed, watching. The second she broke away from that vehicle silhouette, everything changed. She was upright, alone, and moving. The lion dropped into a low stalking posture, body flat, eyes locked. No growl, no warning. It charged explosively, and I mean zero hesitation. The impact knocked her completely off her feet. There was a brief struggle on the ground, but the lion was already repositioning. It locked its jaws around her throat, compressing her airway and the blood vessels in her neck simultaneously. Then it shook, hard. The force caused severe trauma to her cervical spine. She lost consciousness within seconds. The tourists stood frozen. Intervening would have meant risking a second attack. And honestly, by the time anyone could have reacted, it was already over. This one is hard for me. She was doing what she loved, standing in the place she wanted to be more than anywhere else in the world. And one moment of overconfidence took all of it away. The senior ranger returned to find the scene already finished. Lesta was pronounced dead from asphyxiation and vascular compromise combined with catastrophic cervical spine trauma. The reserve's investigation concluded the lion's behavior was a natural predatory response. The animal was not destroyed. Rangers pointed to relocation stress and the protocol violation as the key factors. I think what stays with me is that she wasn't reckless by nature. She just trusted her familiarity more than the rules. And out here, that's all it takes. Her family in Germany was notified, and the story hit the safari training community hard. A painful reminder that experience with calm, habituated lions means nothing when the animal in front of you isn't one of them. Lesta Prim's story was a devastating reminder of how fast a lion can turn when one mistake breaks the barrier. For Garrick Vone, it wasn't a predator hiding in the grass. It was a territorial giant guarding the waterline, and he walked right into its path. It was April 22nd, 2015, and the afternoon heat in northern Thailand had pushed past 95 degrees. A small, privately operated animal attraction outside a rural town in Chiang Rai province offered supervised interaction sessions with captive tigers. The facility was not affiliated with any national conservation body and had been running close contact sessions for several years without a serious incident on record. Chloe Nguyen, a 24-year-old beauty and travel influencer from Houston, Texas, had a pattern of collaborating with exotic animal venues across Southeast Asia, framing the encounters as exclusive and aspirational. She arrived that afternoon with a personal photographer and a clear objective: seated portrait with a tiger at close range. What she did not account for was that the tiger had no interest in being part of anyone's content strategy. Handlers positioned her beside a 4-year-old male tiger that had been used in tourist interactions since it was a cub. The animal weighed approximately 385 pounds. 2 handlers were present, one roughly 15 feet to her left, the other near the enclosure entrance behind her. The instruction was standard: no sudden movement, no unsolicited contact, no repositioning without instruction. The session proceeded without incident for the first several minutes. As it continued, Nguyen became more comfortable and began adjusting her poses independently. The handler to her left turned briefly to speak with her photographer about the framing. At that moment, Nguyen reached behind her and placed her open hand against the tiger's flank, at a moment when the animal's attention had shifted sharply toward a noise outside the enclosure. Tigers are solitary predators, and even animals conditioned to human presence from a young age retain the full behavioral architecture of an apex predator. A male of this size carries between 130 and 175 pounds of muscle in the forelimbs and jaw, with retractable claws capable of opening deep lacerations in a single swipe. Captive tigers used in tourist interactions are not domesticated. They are habituated, and that distinction matters enormously. Habituation reduces the threshold for tolerating proximity. It does not eliminate the reflex that fires when an unexpected stimulus arrives from a direction the animal wasn't watching. I find it genuinely hard to watch this kind of scenario play out, because the facility itself is the problem before anyone even walks through the gate. The entire business model depends on people believing that a tiger sitting still is a tiger that is safe to touch. That belief is what these venues sell, and it is wrong every single time. It just doesn't always end badly enough for anyone to notice. The tiger turned and struck in a single motion. The handler to the left crossed the distance in roughly 2 seconds, enough time for the initial contact to be complete. The 2 handlers gave slightly different accounts afterward. One said the tiger had shown a brief ear flick before the strike. The other said there was no warning at all. In the chaos of those 2 seconds, neither account is surprising. Nguyen's photographer had been recording from near the enclosure entrance. The footage was surrendered to local authorities during the liability investigation and has not been released. The facility's legal representatives argued releasing it would prejudice the proceedings, and Nguyen's team declined to authorize distribution, citing the graphic nature of the content and her right to privacy. The footage remains sealed. Nguyen sustained severe lacerations to her right arm and shoulder, and a deep puncture wound to the upper chest. She survived after emergency surgery, but lost significant function in her right hand permanently. The facility did not reopen in its original form. Nguyen did not return to active content creation for over a year and described the moment of contact as instinctive. She had simply reached out without thinking. That description is the part that matters most, not recklessness in the dramatic sense. Just a hand moving without permission in a place where permission was the only thing keeping the situation controlled. It was September 23rd, 2016, when Rexton Drayle and Lumi Skirt arrived at a tiger reserve in central India, chasing golden hour footage. Rexton, 33, had built his following filming risky wildlife encounters operators prohibited. Lumi, 29, specialized in capturing animals in fading sunset light when the forest glowed amber through dust and leaves. They rented a safari jeep with a local driver and entered a zone known for recent tiger sightings, dense bamboo thickets, and limited visibility along narrow dirt tracks. Movements were logged through checkpoints and radio updates. Earlier that afternoon, impatient for dramatic footage, Rexton persuaded the driver to linger near a quieter sector where fresh pug marks had been reported. As evening approached and traffic thinned, they convinced him to pause along a silent stretch bordered by elephant grass and scattered sal trees, despite his unease. Dry forest stretched in every direction, shadows lengthening as the sun sank. Earlier clips showed them laughing softly while langur alarm calls echoed, and peacocks cried from deeper brush, the sky filtering orange through dust haze. Near dusk, they stopped by a clearing where tall grass met the forest edge, glowing in sunset light. Rexton grabbed his camera rig while Lumi gathered lenses. They had done this before, stepping down for quick shots meant to stand out online, despite repeated warnings to stay inside vehicles, and that exiting in tiger habitat was forbidden. Bengal tigers are most active near dusk and dawn, hunting alone and using dense vegetation for concealment. Their striped coats break their outline in grass and shadow, letting them vanish even nearby. A stalking tiger may watch prey for minutes before launching a short, explosive ambush aimed at the neck or throat. The fatal mistake came when Rexton and Lumi slipped a short distance off the track, still within sight of the jeep, focused on their shots while the driver called nervously for them to return. Deeper in the trees, a langur barked sharply, followed by the alarm call of a sambar deer. Warnings neither understood. Neither noticed the tiger resting in shade beyond the grass line, alert the moment they stepped down. The tiger rose silently, body low, shoulders rolling in controlled steps. It approached from behind through the grass, using fading light for cover. By the time it closed to striking distance, Rexton adjusted exposure while Lumi crouched to swap lenses, both with their backs turned. The attack came without warning. The tiger burst from the grass and struck Lumi first, slamming into her back and driving her face down into the soil. In the same motion, its jaws locked onto her throat. The bite compressed her airway and major vessels as the tiger tightened its suffocating clamp. Lumi convulsed briefly, then weakened rapidly as airflow and circulation were cut off. Rexton spun at the impact and froze. He shouted and stumbled backward, half turning as if to run, raising the camera in panic. The movement triggered the tiger's response. After the grip left Lumi limp, the tiger released just long enough to pivot and lunged toward him in 2 strides. It collided with Rexton's torso, knocking him into the grass. The impact drove the breath from his lungs as claws raked his chest and shoulder while the animal grappled to control him. Rexton struggled, twisting and pushing at the tiger's head as it shifted its weight over him. Within seconds, the tiger planted a forepaw across his chest and clamped its jaws onto the side of his neck in a deeper bite. The pressure crushed tissue and punctured major vessels. Blood spread into the grass as the tiger held firm, tightening until Rexton's movements slowed, then stopped. The forest fell quiet, except for rustling grass and the tiger's heavy breathing. After a pause, the tiger returned to Lumi, gripping her by the neck and dragging her toward thicker brush at the forest edge. It then came back for Rexton, hauling him in the same direction, pulling both bodies into dense bamboo where visibility vanished within meters. The attack unfolded in well under 2 minutes. The abandoned jeep remained on the track, doors ajar, cameras scattered nearby. The shaken driver radioed forest staff once he realized the couple had not returned. Fading light and safety rules prohibiting night searches delayed entry. Rangers located the scene early the next morning after tracking the checkpoint log and the driver's report. Flattened grass and drag marks showed where the ambush occurred, before vanishing into dense vegetation. The investigation concluded that Rexton and Lumi had illegally exited their vehicle in active tiger habitat during peak movement hours, ignoring safety rules meant to prevent such encounters. The reserve later reinforced visitor briefings, increased patrols near dusk, and tightened enforcement against unauthorized stops or exits. It was February 22, 2015, and a cool morning haze hung over the forested hills of a wildlife sanctuary in Madhya Pradesh, central India. The sanctuary's dense sal and teak forests sheltered a concentrated population of large predators, drawing steady traffic from visitors who booked open jeep safari excursions through the reserve's unpaved forest tracks. Harshavardhan Kulkarni, a 45-year-old industrialist from Pune, was a frequent visitor to India's wildlife sanctuaries. He maintained a large personal archive of big cat photographs and considered himself deeply knowledgeable about predator behavior. He had arrived the previous evening and requested the earliest available morning jeep safari departure. The safari guide, Devrath Parihar, a 37-year-old licensed naturalist with the State Forest Department, operated the lead vehicle in a convoy of 3 open-top jeeps. Parihar briefed passengers to remain seated at all times and avoid sudden movements or loud noise near animals. Approximately 90 minutes into the morning jeep safari, the convoy located a large male leopard resting on a low branch near the track at unusually close distance. Parihar cut the engine. Kulkarni immediately began photographing. Unsatisfied with the angle, he stood up in the open vehicle and moved toward the front, gaining elevation and closing the apparent distance to the leopard. The sudden upright posture, direct eye contact, and sharp noise he made attempting to get the cat to turn its head created a combination of triggers at dangerously close range. I can't wrap my head around that decision. You're sitting yards from one of the most explosive predators on the planet, and you stand up and shout at it. That's a level of confidence that only works until the one time it doesn't. Tourists in the second jeep, roughly 15 yards behind, had been filming the leopard. Their camera captured the moments leading up to the attack before the footage becomes chaotic and cuts out. Leopards are among the most powerful predators relative to their body size, with adult males weighing between 130 and 175 pounds. When threatened at close range, a leopard's defensive response is immediate and violent, targeting the head and upper body with claws capable of opening deep lacerations and a bite strong enough to penetrate deeply and cause severe trauma. Leopard attacks on humans are most commonly defensive, triggered by sudden movement or noise, and typically end with rapid disengagement. The reaction was instantaneous. The leopard launched from the branch in a rapid burst of claws and bites, lasting only seconds, striking primarily at Kulkarni's head and upper body. He collapsed backward across the seats as the animal struck. Parihar threw the jeep into gear and accelerated. The leopard disengaged almost immediately and disappeared into the undergrowth. What strikes me about leopard attacks is how fast they begin and end. A few seconds of absolute chaos. The animal vanishes like it was never there, and then you see the damage it left behind. That speed is what makes them so dangerous. Kulkarni had sustained severe lacerations to his head and neck, including a deep puncture wound that caused significant arterial bleeding. Parihar and the other guests applied pressure with whatever cloth was available, but the bleeding was difficult to control. He lost consciousness during the prolonged evacuation along winding forest roads. Despite efforts to stabilize him, he succumbed to his injuries before reaching the district hospital approximately 90 minutes later. The combination of severe blood loss and delayed access to advanced medical care proved fatal. 90 minutes on a winding forest road, not knowing whether the person in the back seat is going to make it. I think about Parihar behind the wheel during that drive, and it's hard to imagine carrying that weight. The investigation determined he had provoked the attack by standing, making direct eye contact, and producing noise at dangerously close range. Reserve authorities restricted the footage, citing an ongoing safety review. Stills surfaced on Indian news outlets within weeks, though no confirmed complete footage has been publicly released. He didn't make it, and every other guest on that safari followed the rules and walked away without a scratch. One decision separated him from them, and it played out in less than 5 seconds.